Hey everybody, just a quick note before we get started. First of all, I'm sorry for the delays. Hopefully I got that resolved. Hopefully this one comes out a month after the last one. But my first segment on here, At the Movies with Head, I'm going to announce that I have a special guest. My wife's on this episode. And to get her on here, though, I had to join her in her crafting studio, which is our little side room here, piano room, you normally call it. But I had to join her, so she does cups, t-shirts, things like that for people. And so I had to join her in her crafting room to do this so I could, get some time with her. So there may be some clicks and noises and bumps and things of her working. Please bear with me through that. That's about it. Let's get on with the show, guys.
Overture, cut the lights. This is it, the night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing apart. We know every part by heart.
Hello there, true believers. This is Head Speaks, a proud member of the Headcast Network family of shows. As usual, I am your host, Aaron Moss, aka Head. This is my mostly monthly Headcast, where I talk about comics, movies, role-playing games, TV shows, and anything else geeky that I want. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Let's begin.
What heights we'll hit. On with the show, this is it.
Welcome to Head Speaks episode 33. Today I've got a special guest star, special guest star we're going to call her. But we'll get to that in just 1 second. First up, here's the introduction to... And on this episode of At the Movies of Head, we're going to talk a little bit about a book and a movie, actually a TV show. And I say we, I'm not talking about the mouse in my pocket. Today I'm joined by an extra special guest. She's extra special to me because I married her. It's my wife, Michelle. Hi, honey.
Hi.
And today we're here to talk about the HBO show Game of Thrones.
Yay!
Yes, my wife's a big fan of Game of Thrones. In fact, she got me into it. She got me to read the book, damn her. And George Martin still ain't done writing it, so now if he dies before he finishes, I'm going to curse her out, but that's another story entirely. But since I've got you on here as a guest, honey, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody how you first discovered Game of Thrones?
Considering the fact that I'm a pretty big nerd geek of fantasy and role-playing and all that fun stuff, I've had several friends in my circle of gaming that have talked about it, and I never really, since it's a book and I'm not a huge book reader due to being slow at reading, I kind of just let it go. Well, one day we were at the store, and I believe it was Best Buy or Walmart, I can't remember which, but anyways, they had a picture of the guy on the throne, Ed Stark at the time, but the guy is what I would have noticed him as. Anyways, so I had no idea what it was about except for the fact that it was a fantasy show, and knowing nothing absolutely about it, I had mentioned to you that, hey, I really want to watch this, can we get it? And we got it, and I ended up going in our room one night. I think you were on your computer in the living room, and I went in our bedroom and I watched the first episode, which turned into the second episode, which turned into the third episode, which turned into, oh shit, I gotta go to work tomorrow. And after that, I was just hooked. I never ever have experienced a show that I've ever been. I'm not a big TV person. I don't watch a lot of TV. So, except if it was Disney or something like that. Something safe. Well, this is definitely not safe.
Definitely not safe. Before we go any further, I guess I should warn there is going to be spoilers for most of the HBO show. So if you haven't, we're on just finished season 7. So if you haven't seen up to season 7, be warned that there may be spoilers involved.
Spoilers!
So I think I first read the book, and I would have read the book because of you.
Yes, I'm the one who suggested the book because I wanted to read the books, but I'm one of those people, with having dyslexia, I have a hard time processing books like that. So what better person to bounce stuff off of but someone who can't stop reading on a daily, hourly, minute basis?
That's me. Remember, you want me to read them? I tend to avoid anything that's really popular. I didn't watch Lost for the first season because everyone was saying how great it was, and to me it seemed I didn't see very many promos. To me, it came across as kind of like a reality show, so I avoided that until my best friend said, "No, you got to check this out. It's a great show." So he loaned me the first season of Lost on DVD, and me and Michelle watched that on our honeymoon and got hooked. And then, so Game of Thrones, I think I missed the first season. Just we didn't have HBO, and I wasn't that interested because again, everyone was talking about it. So I don't want to watch everyone else talking about it. But Michelle wanted me to read the book, so okay. So I read the book for her.
It wasn't until after the Red Wedding that you watched it with me.
Yeah.
And the Red Wedding...
Was that season 1 or season 2?
I can't remember. I think it's season 2. Because Robb Stark was already in the process.
Yeah, because I think she was
already pregnant by then.
Died in episode 8 then of the first season?
Yes. So it's definitely season
2. See episode 9?
Mm-hmm.
And for those that haven't watched Game of Thrones, why the heck are you listening to this? But
run away.
Usually on episode 9 of it's a 10 episode show. Usually episode 9 of each season is the big holy crap moment where something big and bad happens. The first season, I believe, was when Ned Stark lost his head. Ned being the patriarch of the Stark family. And then the next season was the Red Wedding. And then I'd have to look up. I forget what happened in the following seasons. But usually episode 9 was the right before the final episode of the seasons where they just dropped everything and started killing people willy-nilly. So how far in the books did you ever read? You got me to read all 5? I think there was 5 books out at this point. You got me to read all 5. How far did you get in these books that you got me to read?
So I did a lot of the audio tapes.
Right.
I say tapes, but CDs in the car.
That still counts.
But just like the Harry Potter books, they all start running together and crossing. I can't make the difference between the book and the movie at some point. It just kind of starts to blend together because of the length of time it takes me to do something. So I don't know, to answer your question. I don't know where I stopped and where I began. However, I do remember talking to you about the Hedge Knight and all that fun stuff. And I know those are side stories that you have also read.
Right, yeah. The Hedge Knight it takes place 100 years before the Game of Thrones books. And the Hedge Knight and his squire, who turns out to be a princeling or whatever, the prince, his name was Aegon. And Targaryen?
Yes.
Yeah, Aegon Targaryen.
Jon Snow's
which
name
filters into later on down the series I think it's his brother.
Who, Jon Snow?
No.
His uncle.
The Targaryen that was in the show, the older Targaryen that was in the show.
Viserys?
No, on the Night's Watch. Wasn't there a Targaryen on the Night's Watch?
Oh, you mean from
first season.
Castle Black.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name, but I do believe the Maester that was there was named. He was a Targaryen. Yes.
Okay, it was the Maester that was. The Maester was
Aegon.
Aegon's either younger brother or son. I think it was his younger brother.
Yes, they were brothers. Yeah. They were brothers. I remember that now.
Because I remember when they mentioned, I'm like, well, I wonder if he's related to Aegon. That was like 100 years earlier, so this dude had to be extremely old. And
he looked old.
He was, and he did look old. So. Anyways, I'm just getting off topic a little bit, I think. But yeah, Aegon. The Hedge Knight books. That's where I was going with this.
You were asking me about what book did I stop reading.
Yeah, so you're not sure you remember which book you stopped reading on. Nope. So she got me to read all 5 books. And she wanted me to watch the show with her, but I didn't want to read the books and watch the shows at the same time because I tend to conflate the two and confuse the two. That's why I started reading the Walking Dead comic after I started watching the show. And I gave up on the comic book because I was enjoying the show. and I was getting confused on, well, who was dead here, who died here, which characters appeared only on the show. It was running together for me, so I put the comic aside, and right now I'm just focusing on the TV show, which is really good. But again, this isn't about The Walking Dead. This is about Game of Thrones.
Good, because you wouldn't have me on as guest.
Yes, my wife's not a big fan of zombies since we had our daughter 9 years ago.
Used to be a huge horror buff, and then she broke me.
But anyway, so Game of Thrones. So, like I said, we're not going to talk much more about the book because, again, Michelle hasn't read all the books, and we will talk about the books as it ties into the TV show because that's Michelle's big thing that she loves. Mm-hmm. So, again, Game of Thrones, the books was written by George R.R. Martin. It's been produced and it's on HBO. Season 7 just ended. And they're going to have one final season, I believe, Season 8, which is going to premiere in 2019.
Bastards!
Yeah, it could be 2 years before we get to the season finale. Or the final season.
That kills me. There's a lot of fans that are not happy about that they have to wait that long. I
have seen this on Facebook. Anyway, so let's start from the beginning. Who's your favorite character altogether on Game of Thrones? Again, there's been many characters, some that's living, some that's dead.
You know, that's a hard question too, only because there's so many different personality traits.
That you don't want to name a favorite character still alive because you don't want to die off.
Well, from what I've read, George R.R. Martin has agreed to keep Tyrion alive because his wife loves that character so much that she's threatened to divorce him. So
even George R.R. Martin bows down to the whims of his wife.
Very much so. And he was going to write off Arya, but his wife actually loved Arya so much that he actually had to rewrite her part in the books.
I've heard that somewhere.
Yes. See, I do read, but I just really read crappy and useless stuff. I guess we fit in well.
That's what it's full of, useless junk that no one cares about.
Yep. So to answer your question, it really depends on what's going on in the show. Because Tyrion, I will have to say, is probably, like a lot of people's, one of my favorite characters. Only because of where he started and where he's at. But to me, he's kind of lost some pizzazz. I know that there's a lot of sayings that, because George R.R. Martin is not reading right now, or writing it as much as the creators of HBO, and I forget their names. To answer your question about who my favorite character is, it really depends on what time or what we're watching at the moment. And real quick,
Tyrion Lannister is played by Peter Dinklage, who was in X-Men Days of Future Past as Trask.
He's actually been in quite a few movies.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of things, but that's one of the most... He was also in that, what was it called? Pixels. The Adam Sandler movie about the video games. He was in that also. He's been in a lot of things.
So Tyrion's a really interesting character. But, the one character that's really grown on me is Sansa. And the reason why I say that is when she first started, she was a sniveling little princess type character that, only wanted pretty things, and she wanted to be the princess and marry the prince, and she was very snotty and really stuck up. And then reality hit her, and she's been through a hell of a lot of stuff. And I feel like she almost became hard. And I feel like with her, especially at season 7, I really feel like her and Arya, when they played that game and ended up setting up Peter Baelish.
Which I did not see coming. Michelle saw it and she's like, oh, they're playing. I'm like, I don't know. It's I don't want to second guess the writers because they'll do anything, but I didn't quite see that coming. But yeah, Michelle's like calling it.
I called it to the book. I was pretty excited about that.
I think they're teaming up. They're going to get him. I don't know.
It was just for me, well, I'm digressing again.
That's right. What happens?
To me, the fact that when she was telling Arya, or when Arya was telling Sansa, when Arya was telling Sansa that you were there and you didn't do anything, but if you go back and watch that whole season 1, which I thought was really well written, because a lot of us now being multiple seasons later, have forgotten what Sansa actually responded with during that whole scene, because we were very fixated on Arya.
Right.
Everything was about the little Arya who was like maybe 9 or 10 watching her dad get beheaded. But you have Sansa up on the platform screaming and crying and pleading. And the whole time Sansa and Arya are playing their quote unquote game, she was telling Sansa how she just stood there in her pretty dress and like watched it all happen. But it didn't make sense to me. So that's why I say that.
See, I forgot about how she reacted. I was just... And again, I still don't like Sansa because I blame her for this whole thing happening. Because she hadn't told Joffrey that they were going to be leaving and sent a bird that got caught, a rave or whatever that was captured, and informed the queen of what was going on. Her dad wouldn't have died and things would have been a lot different. So I blame her for most of what's been going on.
I disagree, but I can't back it up because it all blurs together. But I don't believe that. I believe she had some hand in it, but the Game of Thrones is about everybody playing a game. Right. And I feel like she had a part in it. However, I don't feel it was necessarily her fault he got beheaded. Because had he not gone against that whole thing...
Well, that's he's honorable. That's his whole thing.
But she was also a kid.
Right. And I can.
That's kind of like your daughter going into the pizza place when I mentioned whisperingly... Aaron, this place looks like a little hole in the wall. And she walks in saying, where's the hole in the wall?
Well, again, much the same. If you didn't want her to say that, you should have said anything in front of her.
But I didn't. I said it to the side. But yeah, I see your point. Was there. However...
And again, I'm not saying... Sansa didn't do it intending for her father to be killed. But she was, again, as you said earlier, she was a spoiled little brat. And I may be pulling more of this from the book, because again, I confuse the two at times. So I may be.
She was definitely a lot more vicious in the book than she is in the TV show.
Yeah, she was very whining and sniveling, and well, I don't want to be here. I want to marry the prince. I want to be a queen. I want to do that. And then she got upset when her father said that you guys need to go back home because of all the shenanigans going on there in the capital. And instead of complying like a good little girl and listening to her father. All you little girls out there listening, that's why you need to listen to your parents. Otherwise, you cause them to get their head chopped off. But
you're screwed.
I am. But yeah, she had listened to her father and gone quietly and got the heck out of Dodge. But no, she had to send a note. I think she sent a raven to Joffrey or told Joffrey directly. But she was letting Joffrey know that her father's taking him away from them, trying to separate the two. Which alerted Cersei, his mom, the queen, the evil of the universe. And so and again, yes, if her father had been more willing to play the game, had been willing to lie, but again, that's not the Stark's way.
Right.
Much like Jon, even though we find out later he's not a Stark or a Snow, but that's for the end of this season 7. And Robb was the same way. The Stark men are very honorable and very true to their word.
Robb was a weakling.
He was weak, yeah. I think he was still honorable because he got it from his father. I think Jon learned more of it.
I think Robb had more of an ego than Jon.
Well, I think what it was Jon, and we're talking about Jon Snow, a.k.a. Jon Stark, the King of the North, all this other stuff. Jon, I think he was stronger and he had more to make up for since he was a bastard.
Right, but on the same, going back to Sansa.
Right.
And you asking me why my favorite character part of the reason why I like her as a character is because I think she also became full circle. And I really feel like she's playing the game more than a lot of these people are. Because the fact that she had Peter Littlefinger whispering in her ear, planting all these seeds. She could have gone a totally different way and gotten away with it because Peter Baelish, he would have done everything in his power if she played the girly, you can get in my pants card.
Well, I also don't think I care for Sophia Turner as an actress.
Oh, see, I like her.
Her very stoic, her facial features and everything, it kind of blends in where she's playing now. But like I saw her in the X-Men movie, the last one was Apocalypse. She was one of the worst parts of that movie to me. I hated her as Jean Grey.
Well, it's because she's not a Jean Grey, though.
But so I said that's the only two things I've seen her in is that and Game of Thrones. I just don't. So far, I don't care for what I've seen. That may be part of that, and I just blame her for her dad dying.
I mean, and my thing is with her, just to kind of finish that off, is anybody who's been through the crap that she's been through and the trials and tribulations, and a lot of them have, but I really feel like she, especially her character, the princess type,
Right.
They're easy to crumble and be poor me, and just, she could have just gone along with everything.
Right.
And she could have been one of those where we could have seen a story where she went from being a Stark to a Lannister and been Cersei's right-hand lady.
Right.
That would have been scary as all get up, because now she knows everything about the Starks. And she could have fed Cersei a bunch more, and we could have seen a completely different show. But because she stayed true to her Stark side and used that Stark-like-esque about her, I think she kind of has overcome a lot of obstacles. And her mental state, my gosh, I couldn't imagine going through the stuff she's been through.
She went through a lot of crap.
Especially with Ramsay. Like, if you think about all the stuff that she went... I mean, look what Ramsay did to... what's his name? Greyjoy.
Greyjoy, yes.
What's his name? Tyrion. No. Shoot. Crap, what's his name?
The Greyjoy kid.
Yeah, but what's his name? Theon.
Theon, there you go. Yeah, Theon Greyjoy.
Yes. I mean, look what Ramsay did to Theon.
Which, again, while he's been a bit of a bastard, Theon's a great character for what he's doing. He's not one of my favorites, but I think he's come a long way. He's been through a lot of crap. And I don't like him as far as he's not one of my favorite characters, but I think he's an interesting...
He definitely... I'm curious to see what he's going to do to get his sister back.
Yes. And he is coming to his own, I think. It's just... Like I say, he's not a great character, to be like, well, he's my favorite character, but he is... Like, he's an interesting...
He makes good story.
Yes.
For the show. Some, like, a side story that's really not part of...
I don't want to call him a villain, per se, but he's good for gumming up the works. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, he did. He did a really good job of doing that. When you were talking about how he's part Stark, part Greyjoy, the conversation that Jon Snow had with him this season about when he apologized to Jon for what he did, and how Jon graciously told him he'd forgive him for some things, but some things were not to be forgiven. I think that conversation is going to come back, and Jon is going to have that same conversation either with himself or with somebody in the Stark side, because once he finds out that he is not necessarily Stark, what's his name? The father. Ned Stark's son. Sorry, all these names. Once he finds out he's really not Ned Stark's son, he's going to have an identity crisis, because now he's a Targaryen. And he's now Targaryen and Stark, whereas Theon is Greyjoy and Stark. So now they're going to have that in common. And I think that's going to be an interesting play if you...
most definitely, if they play it right.
Yeah.
They've only got 7, 8, 9 episodes, how many episodes they're doing for season 8, but... Going back to that conversation between Greyjoy and Jon, I was sure as heck thought that Greyjoy, Theon, was going to try to kill Jon when they were talking.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know, just the way he was, I apologize, I don't deserve it. I don't know, just for something about me, I was just waiting for him to try to kill Jon. That maybe because Jon's been killed so many times.
I never thought of it, because the way I saw it was we were seeing Theon evolving. It was an evolution. Like, he was the total prick womanizer, thought his stuff don't stink, and then he got knocked down a few pegs and knocked down a few more pegs and then dug a hole and thrown in the hole and covered. And he literally was traumatized to the point where I didn't know if he was going to come out of it. I was rooting for it, because nobody in the human condition, you don't want to see people struggle like that.
Well, see, I didn't think he was going to do it for his own personal gain. I thought that either his cousin, his uncle, or Cersei or someone had gotten to him, and that's why he was going to kill Jon.
No, because
I was waiting for that, and then John's like, "I forgive you." They shake, they walk away. I'm like, "Oh, I guess I was wrong."
No, because who else was going to rescue his sister? And with all the stuff that his sister has done for him,
right? If his sister's still alive.
Now, did you know? Here's another worthless fact that I know about this show because for some reason, when I'm at work and I'm bored, I Google this stuff. Theon is a brother in real life to a British singer-actress called Lily Allen. And I actually like Lily Allen's music.
I've heard the name mentioned.
And she writes a song about him when he was younger, about how worthless he was and how all he did was smoke pot and do nothing. And it's literally called Alfie, I believe, or something like that. But they offered Lily Allen the part of Greyjoy's sister, Yara. That's her name, Yara.
Right.
And she turned it down because Theon's actor, I think his name is like Alfie something.
His real name's Alfie Allen. Yeah,
Alfie Allen. Alfie already had the part as Theon. She thought it'd be really weird to be on the horse with him fondling her, and it be her real brother. So she turned down the part because of that.
That'd been more realistic.
But that's so just a little side note that she actually was offered the part first, but she turned it down due to the fact that her brother was not going to be fondling her on the horse.
And I'm not familiar with Lily Allen. Lily Allen? Yeah, Lily Allen.
Yeah, Lily Allen.
So I was just looking her up online real quick, see what she looks like. And again, actors, they can do different things. I don't know.
Well, now you know what Yara looks like. It would be hard to place another Yara.
Well, I read the book first, so I had Yara in my mind already from the book. And the gal they have playing Yara now
is Yara.
I can see her being Yara. She's very hardcore, very matter-of-factly. And again, I haven't seen this gal act or perform or anything. Looking at her, I don't see her looking hard enough to be.
No, she's very soft and feminine,
Yara. But again, that's what acting is, I guess.
Yeah,
so you never know.
So yeah, and then another favorite character of mine actually would be, of course everybody likes Arya, but to me the last couple of seasons I've lost interest in her, not because the whole faceless thing where she was training and all of that. I didn't care for that. I just thought it was too drug on. I wanted something more to... No, there were parts where when she got wounded, but I'm like, someone who got that wounded should have died.
See, I liked her little faceless man thing she went through, and I like how that led up to the beginning of this last season when she killed the elder Walder Frey.
Yes.
She killed the elder Walder Frey, who was the old leader of the Frey clan that killed her brother Robb, killed her mother.
Yes, she definitely got revenge for the Starks.
She killed him at the end of last season, and then the beginning of this season, he's having a banquet for all his people, and I thought that was funny. Michelle's like, didn't he die? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then he ends up...
I wasn't expecting that.
Poisoning the entire Frey clan, and then she pulls off Walter's face, and we see...
Walder.
Yeah, Walder. Sorry about that. Walder's face, and we see this little Arya. I thought that was just a neat little... Yeah,
I agree. I love the fact that she can do all that. I love the fact that she's a stealthy assassin, and to see her when she was training with her Bravos teacher, which I'm praying we find out that he's still alive still. I'm holding on to hope. I want him to be alive so bad because I just thought he was a really interesting character. Her dancing
Right, I was
instructor.
trying to think if we somewhere along the way, didn't they mention that he might be...
No, when she was in Bravos, I was hanging by a thread hoping she'd run back into him. But we never, ever hear. The only thing is that we've heard, there's been speculation that he's still alive because of the voices that were in when they attacked.
Right.
But we don't know whether he's alive or dead.
Did we ever see him and the Faceless Man? I forget the guy's name now.
Together?
Yeah, did we ever see them...
No, and there's theories that he is the Faceless Man, but I really doubt that with the way he trained Arya and the way the Faceless Man trained Arya. I just feel like they were two different training styles.
Well, and that's the whole point of taking on the whole different identity to have. Because when you take on as a faceless person, they take other people's faces, put it on their own, they're going to become that person.
I'll give you that much, but I still don't think it was him. But Maybe. I mean, that's a good point. But yeah, I'm just hanging on the thread that he is not a faceless person. That he is the trainer that he was, because I thought he was a really great and I loved his character.
He was an interesting character. I did enjoy that character.
I think his name was like
Sergi or
Pharrell or something.
Something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, I liked him a lot. I love the Mountain. I think the Mountain is very comical. I think it's the gruffness and roughness and the crudeness, like Brom. Brom's another character that I just...
The Hound you're referring to?
I'm sorry, the Hound. The Hound. I really like the Hound. The Hound has...
For those that are not aware, the Hound and the Mountain are brothers.
Yes.
The Mountain is the larger, older brother who, when they were kids, he burned...
He threw him into a fire.
His younger brother. He threw his face into the fire for some... I forget the exact reason now.
For a toy.
Some stupid reason he burned his face, so... They got that little bit of animosity between them. And at some point in the recent past, the Mountain died, was brought back to life. They still haven't gone into how that's happened yet.
How Mountain died?
No, he came back to life.
Oh, because we can talk about how the Mountain died, because...
We can talk about how the Mountain died if you want to.
That really made me sad. Because now that I think about it, that was one of my favorite characters was... and I can't think of his name. Oberyn. He was pretty to look at. Not gonna lie. There's a lot of men that are very pretty to look at. And there's women, so it's a good one for both sides. However, a lot of the women are kind of young, so it's kind of creepy now that I'm thinking about it.
Yes.
But, most of them are 18, so I guess you're all right.
They're of age.
But for me... I liked his character because of how open he was. And not just the sexual part, but just he was very sure of himself. And his fighting style with when they were in the arena and Oberyn is fighting. Do you have his name?
That's what I was looking for. Could you talk about it?
You can type in Prince Oberyn and it'll show you. I loved the whole scene where he's fighting the Mountain in the arena. And had he not been cocky, he would have won. And I did not expect that to happen. I really was thinking he was going to live. And when the Mountain came over to him and put his hands on his face and popped him like a pimple, that made me very sad.
And see, he would have won. He could have walked away scot-free if he hadn't been so arrogant and so much wanting the Mountain to say who killed his sister.
Yes, because he was definitely in it for revenge.
And he was played by a gentleman named Pedro Pascal.
Yes, Pedro Pascal.
A Chilean-born American actor.
Hubba.
He was also in some Netflix show named Narcos. I guess he was in this last Kingsman movie, which I haven't seen the first one yet either. But
no, that whole scene with the Mountain is a very well executed scene, and the way they did the fighting, and I've seen some of the background or the behind the scenes footage of it, and it's just amazing. And the way he uses his spear and that kind of thing it was really cool to watch. I'm not a sports person. I like watching MMA with my dad, but I think it's called MMA. I don't even know.
Yeah, you're right.
If it's the fighting one.
Yeah, I watched twice with Scott when he was down.
Yeah, or you have to watch it when you're at my parents' house.
Right. Yeah, I can't get in the whole MMA thing. I can't have someone beat the crap out of me for half an hour and then afterwards shake their hand and go out for a beer. I would hold a grudge and I would want to kick their butt afterwards. So I just...
And you wonder where your son gets it from.
I don't know.
But yeah, no, I just thought it was a really neat... But going back to the whole... You just wanted to tell him to shut up so he could win and so that's how the Mountain becomes ill because he gets poisoned. He wasn't. He was poisoned to the tip of the spear.
Yeah,
that
the spear
is correct.
had poison on it.
Yes, and that's the same poison.
And that's how he ended up dying.
That they used in the lipstick that killed Marcella.
Right.
That Oberyn's wife, lover, girlfriend, flavor of the month. Yeah. Because he had several. Yeah. And they've had children with each other. He had 3 daughters. I was really disappointed, though, about that whole, because I really wanted to see more of that culture and those characters. I really feel like they're wasted characters.
And in the book, they do go more in depth with the Sands.
Do they?
Yes, they do a little more in depth. They show a little more with the Sand sisters and Marcel living with them.
See, yeah, I thought that could have been a very interesting, but it's only so many seasons, and really it's kind of a side thing.
Right.
But I if they did an Oberyn show with, like, the Sand Sisters, Oberyn and the Sand Sisters, I probably would end up watching it, because I really thought that culture was an interesting culture.
It's very interesting.
The women were very strong and very strong-minded. Speaking of strong-minded and strong women, what about, and I'm jumping all over the place, but...
sure, that's what happens.
Especially when you like all the characters. The grandma...
Oh. Deathstorm.
Yes, Deathstorm.
Grandma Tyrell.
Yes. By the way, she was a beautiful woman.
That's what I've heard somewhere. I saw that.
She is breathtakingly beautiful. She was a beautiful woman. Like, beautiful woman.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of her somewhere.
Yeah.
For some reason, but...
Well, the shoot, they were comparing her to someone in the show, and I don't know. And then I really liked, going back to Deathstorm, or whatever you want to call her, Grandma Tyrell.
And the reason I say that is because she wears some sort of headgear. She's old and wrinkly looking, and to me, she looks very much like the Deathstorm character from the Firestorm comics.
And I loved her character.
She was a very sassy pants, very matter of fact.
Anytime she spoke, she demanded your full attention. And you hung by every word, because whenever she spoke, it wasn't fluff. There was something about her you just...
Well, she was an older woman. She's seen a lot. She's royalty. She knows what she wants, and she's at the point of age where... I don't care what you have to say. I'm going to tell you what I want, and you're going to listen to me or else.
But she did it in such a way that it wasn't belittling to people.
Well, no.
And
I think she was just very matter-of-factly about it.
But she did it with pizzazz, and she did it
Maybe that's
smart.
What it is.
She was so smart.
Right.
Because nobody caught on that she's the one who killed Joffrey.
I knew it.
Well, you read the books, and we kind of figured it out.
I figured she was behind it. Because, like what you said, or maybe said on the show, that, she wouldn't want her granddaughter living her life with a jerk-off like Joffrey.
We called it, but I meant in the characters in the show. Like, especially Jaime Lannister.
Right.
Hubba Hubba. Who, sorry, honey.
Yeah.
But Jaime Lannister, when he killed her, when he gave her... He respected her, because even though she always told him what for, she never told him that she killed his son until the last very minute.
Right.
What a devious thing to do. I mean, literally...
She was dying and...
Well, she knew she was going to get killed, because they took over the... What was it called? The Rose Garden.
Rose Garden.
And she knew she was going to be killed. Someone was going to come in there and murder her. And Jaime knew it too, because Cersei had ordered it. But Cersei gave Jaime the common courtesy to go in there and do it himself.
Well, what it was, she wanted Jaime to go in there and make it painful and last a long time and torture. And Jaime's like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. She's an older lady. She's royalty. She deserves a certain amount of decorum and to go out peacefully, if you will.
And she's never done anything wrong to him, per se.
That he's aware of.
Yeah. And so they're sitting there... And she, just a boss, knows what's going on, knows she's going down, no panic, stoic as I've ever seen anybody who knows they're going to face death, drinks that wine, and then starts to talk.
And the wine in this case was poison wine that he decided to gift her some wine. And instead of doing what his sister wanted and making it bloody and painful and messy, he gave her poison wine so she would just die peacefully, if you will. And then, what does she do, honey?
She tells him how it is. She begins to just... I want to go back and rewatch that scene, because there was so much that she said.
Right.
And the look on his face, his name's like Walder or something. I forget his name. Walter something.
The actor?
Yeah, I forget his name.
Nikolai.
There we go. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, Waldo is his last name.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess I wasn't that wrong.
That's where you're getting it from.
Nikolai, the actor, I think he played that scene beautifully. The horror that he had to feel knowing, because if we go back a little bit and we talk about Jamie was labeled the Kingslayer. He had this rep of being this notorious, famous swordsman who could kill anything, do anything. Like, he was the golden child of the Lannisters. If you really want to go and say what he was the golden child.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he couldn't do any wrong in his dad's eyes because he did his dad's bidding. However...
Well, there was 3 Lannister kids. There was him and his twin sister, Cersei. So, again, he was favored over her because he is a boy. He is the male child. And then the younger brother, who we've talked about briefly, Tyrion Lannister, who, when he was born, he killed his mother... And
in
he's a dwarf.
Birth.
Yeah, in childbirth. And he's a dwarf.
Dwarf.
Little person.
Yes.
He's a little person, and he's just deformed. So
they make him look a lot uglier in the books than they do the TV show. By all means. Like, I do remember that very well.
And that's one thing. Yeah, and that's what they do. They tend to do in TV shows. They don't want to have truly ugly people. In the book, when he gets damaged during the Battle of Blackwater, and in the book they talk about how his nose is cut off, or mostly cut off, and his horrible scars, and in the show it's just a little scarred, and it's, yes, he is scarred, but it's not nowhere near as bad as the book makes it out to be. So,
and Cersei, of course, has hated him from day one for killing their mother, but... Wasn't there a part in the story where they say that Jaime, his brother, would sing to him at night? Or no, it was actually Cersei that did.
Yeah, there's comments made that, and again, Jaime, while he is, at first he's portrayed as a bit of a bastard. He sleeps with his sister.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
He's comes across as a real jerk. He's actually, I think he's a decent enough guy in a bad position.
Yes. He was dealt a family with a bunch of A-hats.
Yes. His father was a real jerk, raised him to be a jerk, and considering how, he was raised and taught to be, I think he's making the best of a bad situation.
I also feel like we're going to see some redemption next season.
Well, I think he's been working on redemption.
Well, yes.
For the last several seasons.
And I think Brienne has really brought a lot of that out in him because he saw a real knight and what a real knight's all about, honor and duty and keeping your word.
Well, one thing that makes him a bad guy, in quotes, is that he's been ostracized by everybody in theory because he's the Kingslayer. He killed the previous king. But from what we hear, the previous king was insane and he deserved to be killed. But it's still a bad. He took an oath to protect the king, and then he ended up breaking that oath by killing the king. So that's kind of
behind his back, which makes it worse.
Which can make him a bad guy, but again, when you're killing a tyrant that's going around burning people just for the hell of it.
But here's the kicker on that, though. That wasn't really brought up until far later that we actually find out about the Mad King and why they called him the Mad King. We hear some things at the beginning, but it's mostly about how he's a Kingslayer and...
Well, yeah, when we first introduced to Jaime, they give you the worst part. He's a Kingslayer, he's broke his oath.
Yep. And that's what you believe. He's just this jerk-off character. And then when you start... I love that progression.
Right.
But now I feel like he's taken off and he pretty much told Cersei to pound sand... Which blows me away because if you've not watched Game of Thrones, you would understand that there's a whole other aspect of their brother-sister relationship that is very frowned upon, which is incestuous. They had babies together when we mentioned Joffrey and Marcella and... What was the other one? They had 3 together.
Right.
So far. But they had another one. I forget his name because he was king.
Tommen.
Tommen. I liked Tommen. But really, if you think about it, I forgot what I was going to say.
We're talking him and Cersei had the 3 kids together.
Oh, I was just explaining that there's more to their relationship than just brother and sister.
Oh, very much so.
And they were bumping uglies. And that really, to be honest with you, if you want to blame anybody, blame Bran for climbing the tower and seeing those two bumping uglies.
You can't blame Bran for that. He was playing around. He was a kid. He was climbing the wall. No, there's a difference. Bran was just climbing around. It was his home. It's not like he was invading someone else's home.
But his mother told him not to climb those walls.
So again, listen to your parents or that you cause them to be killed.
We're screwed.
but he was just playing around and climbing the walls, not knowing what, Sansa, on the other hand, disobeyed her dad and told Joffrey that, my dad...
But she didn't start it. If you wanted to blame someone for starting it, when he climbed up the tower and saw them bumping uglies, and they pushed him out the window,
right.
That started everything. And that was what? The first episode? I believe it was the very first episode.
Or we look at blaming. We actually blame Cersei. It's her fault for it. Well, her and Jaime? Maybe Littlefinger. Because Littlefinger was behind a lot of this thing going around.
And the spider, what's his name?
Varys. I was saying the book, they ended the last, if I'm not mistaken, they ended the last book saying that Varys had came out and basically said that he had started everything and he was behind it all.
Oh, really?
Yes.
In the book?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
In the 5th book, I believe it was.
I think there was that conversation with Littlefinger. I think that was maybe the last conversation. We might have to go back and watch those again, which I'm not opposed to because I think I've seen up until season 4 at least 5 or 6 times easily. That's probably why they all blend together now.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I could say each character in their own light I've enjoyed thoroughly. And that's very hard to really enjoy. Now, I even liked the gay king. What's his name?
Oh, that was...
we forgot about him.
It was one of...
It was...
Robert's brothers.
Rose Garden's grandson before the granddaughter took over. And Marjorie. It was Marjorie's brother.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about her husband when she married.
No.
She married one of the...
No, she married Tommen.
Before that, she was either married or going to marry one of Robert Baratheon's brothers.
Yeah, which... Oh, was it Robert Baratheon? That's right, because it was Stannis and Renly. I apologize. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
Oh, no, you're not wrong. Her brother, if I'm not mistaken, was
banging the
screwing around with her future husband.
Yes. And Sansa thought she was going to marry him.
Right.
And they ended up marrying her off to Joffrey instead. Yes. But yeah, no, I liked Renly. I thought he would have been a good king. I think he had the heart for it. Just like I feel like Jon could have been a good king. I'm on the fence about that now. I don't like you start off saying one thing, and by the time you watch the show, you're on a totally different kick.
No, I still think Jon would be a good king.
You think
Jon Snow? Yeah, he's like his dad. He's honorable.
Yeah,
when he's
a very good leader, and he's very honest.
And
like you said,
he learned that from his father.
Yes.
So I mean, that's one thing his father told him early on in the series before he died. His father took him out and he captured someone doing. I forget what it was now. And his dad ordered the guy to be killed, and instead of making one of his men do it, he did the duty himself.
The guy ran away when something bad happened.
Yeah, I forget the details, but
and he had said the guy who gives the sentence is the one who does the sentence.
Who should do the sentence? So that's something that Jon's learned from his father. I think both Robb and him did, but
yes,
again, I think as I said earlier, trying to prove himself to be a Stark, even though he's not. I mean, he always thought he was a bastard of a Stark. He always thought that Ned was his dad. But he wasn't officially a Stark because he was born out of wedlock, in quotes.
So question for you then.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question this time. How do you think Daenerys is going to react when she finds out that she is no longer the rightful heiress of the throne? Because she has fought. If you think about the character as a whole, not just right now, she came from being sold, to being raped, to becoming queen of the Dothraki, which I find to be such a phenomenal group or race. I love and the fact that they literally created, just like Tolkien, all the dialect from it, having somebody come in and create a whole dialect, and then the characters or the actors learning the dialect.
Right, that was really cool.
It blows me away. Like, I love that aspect. But I'm wondering how she is going to react to finding out that news, because she's bumping uglies with them too now.
Well, so. I think they're going to go one or two. They can go one or two ways with it. Either they're going to marry and roll together, or she's going to get upset and not want to accept him as the rightful ruler, and I think they're going to butt heads. I think it's going to go one of the two ways. With Game of Thrones, I can see them butting heads and fighting it out.
There's so many fans out there that have been waiting and waiting for the two of them to hook up.
Right.
There's that meme that says that she finally got 8 inches of snow.
Right.
Which is hilarious. But I just don't know. Like, I don't even know how I feel about that. Not the fact that they're hooking up, because to be honest with you, I think that was a weak storyline arc. Like, I didn't want them to hook up. I wanted there to be tension. I like the tension.
But for those that don't follow, Daenerys Targaryen, who she believes she's the rightful ruler of the kingdom because her father was the Mad King that was killed, she's coming back in to take over things. And we just find out this season that her brother married Ned Stark's sister. And they had...
In a secret wedding.
And then she gave birth to A.K. Jon Snow, who we find out again, his real name is Aegon Targaryen.
Now, in that regard, I told you, this is another one I'm super proud of, that I broke the code on that, too, because...
You talking about that a couple seasons ago, that...
I had a feeling that... Because if you think about Ned Stark as a whole...
Right.
Ned Stark is very honorable. What is something that's very dishonorable? You marry a woman and you have an affair.
Right.
So why would we have this really honorable man?
Well, I never thought that Jon was his son because, again, as we said earlier, Ned's was very honorable, very much a man of his word, very much, I'm going to do what I say. So I don't think I really thought that Jon was his son. I don't think I ever thought that Jon was Ned's son, per se. I knew he was hiding something, and I figured he had made a pledge to somebody or had promised somebody that he would take Jon as his own. But I never really thought that Jon was his son because, as we've talked about numerous times, Ned was a very honorable person. As you said, cheating on your spouse for whatever reason is probably... complete 180 from being honorable.
Yeah, so exactly.
But I didn't know if it was this. I didn't realize exactly the truth.
But if you think about it, the one thing that blows me away is that he kept it from his wife.
Right.
We talk about Catherine Stark for a moment. She hated Jon for that because she really felt that Ned did that, which kind of makes me sad in its own right because I know she's angry at him, but it's like, if he's so honorable, wouldn't you? But then again, he told her he did. And so if you think your husband's honorable and he tells you that he did something, you're probably going to believe him.
So the sad part about it is that she died thinking that her husband screwed around on her so many years ago.
Yes. And she hated Jon for it. And that's really sad because she was a very wonderful mom from what you could tell. She was a warm,
loving mother from what we see.
Yes. Like, she was very, very loving. But she was very hard to Jon. Oh, he couldn't even eat with them. Like, in the books, I do remember in the books, they really do hone in on how horrible of a person she was to Jon.
Right. Well, also, and she's been in the show, they've underplayed her more so than the books. Because, again, the books, spoilers again for the books, she was killed. And in the books, she was brought back to life also. And so she's returned in the books as the Stone Queen or something. I forget the exact title they used for her. Stone Lady or something like that.
I remember it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, but she returned from the dead, which they neglected that whole...
Lady Stoneheart.
There you go, Lady Stoneheart. And they neglected that whole storyline from the show just because, again, they've only got so much time and so many damn characters.
But wouldn't it have been a neat thing to see?
Oh, yeah. And I was kind of hoping to see that.
I mean, with all the zombies... Because around that time when it would have been part of that story, that's when Walking Dead was becoming a very big phenomenon. And I really feel that they kind of lost the boat on that. Because I feel like there's a lot of geeks who like Walking Dead and they like Game of Thrones. And if you would have thrown a walking zombie lady into the picture...
Well, they've already got zombies in Walking Dead.
Walking zombie lady who's out to kill people that ruined her Stark family. That could have been really cool.
Yeah.
That could have been really, really cool.
I don't think it had anything to do with
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, they didn't do it. I think it just, again...
No, I don't think it's anything. I just think they could have jumped on that boat.
Yeah.
And played into that. Because right then that was really
Plus,
popular.
the big bad of the show is the zombies anyways.
The Night King
and the Rights and all of the basically the zombies, the White Walkers, they're attacking. So I think they just maybe didn't want to overplay the whole Living Dead. Plus, you got the Mountain who's come back to life.
But I'm really sad that Khal Drogo didn't come back to life. I mean, he did, but he didn't. Right. You know, but...
And what was the other guys? Lord Baylor or whatever that was brought back to life several times?
Yeah, I'm still not... I still don't know about him. Like, he's one of those characters that you hear all this stuff about, and he's playing into it, but I don't feel like he has... To me, he feels like a very disposable character. In a way. I think he gives information through the storyline, which I think that's what his character is all about, is to throw in bits and pieces so you understand. They couldn't excise
him from the show without really losing anything. At this point, though, you never know if in the last season he may...
Well, I'm sure he does have something because, we're starting to get to the end where they're going to start wrapping stuff up. And another interesting character. I mean, Khal Drogo was really cool in his own right.
Shenanigans.
You just don't like him because now he's becoming Aquaman, a.k.a. Namor.
I like Khal Drogo. I think he was a great character. He was very... Again, he was a bit of a bastich, taking advantage of Danny
But that was their culture.
It doesn't make it right, though.
In their culture, it was.
It doesn't... Again, 200 years ago, owning slaves was fine. It doesn't make it right. Just because it's okay in our culture.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You could beat a black man, rape the woman, and they're black. But that's fine. That's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
It still doesn't make it right.
I'll see your point. It's
whether or not that's our culture or not, it's still wrong.
Viserys. I mean, yes, it was wrong, but she was. I don't even know how to make. I can't
don't defend him. Just because you like him and you want him.
No. I actually no. Like no, that's not my type. I mean, trust me, it's not my type. But no, it has nothing to do with that. There's a lot of women who think he's absolutely the prettiest thing walking the earth, and I'm just like, too brawny, I don't know. Oberyn was definitely not a Khal Drogo type.
No.
So, no, but I think his character was neat. I was really sad. I'd like to have seen more Dothraki, but I really love how Daenerys uses the Dothraki in her fighting.
Right.
In the whenever the Dothraki show up and Jaime Lannister sees them, I think he pees himself a little bit. Like, that's how scared he is of the Dothraki because they are savages.
Well, and Jaime, unlike his sister, is smart enough to realize what they're going up against.
Well, because she's not out there fighting.
Right. She's not going to be out there fighting. Well, Jaime's going to be out there with his men. And he knows what the Dothraki, I can't say it. He knows what they are. He knows that they're death incarnate, if you will, that they're,
That he calls them savages. That's the best word for it. Is they fight with no honor. Where he'll fight and he'll kill you, but he does it, I wouldn't say in an honorable way, but that's the best way to say it.
He is honorable because that's, as you talked about earlier, he took off this last season, left his sister because...
His girlfriend, wife, woman,
his sister,
love child.
Cersei.
Love baby.
Because she made a promise to Jon and Daenerys and all of them and said, well, I will have my men fight with you against the White Walkers. And then she got back. Jaime's like, well, I'm going to get the men ready to go. She's like, what, are you stupid? I'm just telling them that. I'm going to wait till they get, and then we'll deal with the survivors.
I think he was also tired of her shit. I think that he was tired of her treating him and speaking to him in a way of that.
I think it was part of it. I think most of it was, again, as we talked about, Jaime is, even though he grew up with his father, who his father is, and Cersei, and taught and raised to be a bastich, he's a very honorable person. And so when his sister pledged to fight alongside everyone else against the White Walkers, and then once she gets back, what are you, stupid? I'm not going to do that. We're going to wait, and then we'll fight the survivors. I think, like I say, part of it, he was tired of being talked down to and his sister's crap, but also, again, I think he got tired of being on the losing side. Not the losing side, but being a bad guy, in quotes.
Yeah, I think he's learning to. I think there's a lot more to him, and we've been saying that for a long time.
Well, like you said, I think Brianna brought a lot of that out of him. And again, they showed more of it in the book with their travels together, but I think she brought out the humanity in him, if you will.
I love the whole scene in the show where she's got him tied up and they're tromping through, and he's calling her every name in the book and insulting her, and she just takes it like a champ. Like,
well, she's another very honorable person.
Yes. And that's why, and I'm going to go back to it again, and I called it, the girls, Sansa and Arya, sent her off.
So she wouldn't have to intervene.
So she wouldn't intervene what they were doing with Baelish. Or because they so openly were arguing. I think she would have tried to stop the girls from arguing had she heard that. I agreed with you originally, but I don't know if it got far enough that she would have intervened, because it didn't come down to actual violence or even a show of violence other than Arya threatening, again in quotes, her sister about, maybe I should take your face, I wonder what it'd be like to, where it becomes... She would have stepped up. She would have stepped between the girls. At that point, she would have stepped up.
But she necessarily had to be in the room at that point.
She could have, right, but I think she would have been around.
So I don't know, but...
I think they were just making sure that factor was not
It's a possibility.
There.
I don't know if it's that or it's just that they wanted to get her over where Jamie's at to carry on that.
And I think they sent her off to not meddle in their business.
I don't know. Let's wait and see if it comes up, but...
I doubt it, because it's a theory of mine.
A lot of your theories have been right, though, so far. So, I mean, that's... Well, I don't want to knock any theories you may have, because you've been right on a lot of these things.
Can you say that again, honey?
No, I'm not. In fact, we go here and delete what I just said.
In fact, I think I need that clip. Just that little clip right there.
You're right. You are right.
And I'm gonna put on, it's going to be my ringtone whenever you call. It's going to say, "You are right." I can edit. I know how to edit.
That mistake again.
Hey, you married twice. You already made that mistake.
Yeah, this is true.
But, I just... Trying to think of any other characters that I find. I really like Braum. If you want to talk about bluntness to the point where he is just like, I'm only doing this so I could get a castle and a name and a woman and to screw all of you guys. And I'm pretty much censoring anything I say because that guy was very, very foul mouth. But he was so comical because he was so blatantly
he was a very funny character.
And he's really kind of gone through some of the characters. Like, he's helped Tyrion, and he's helped Jaime.
Jerome Flynn is his real name.
Jerome Flynn? Flynn. No, he's hilarious. He is just hilarious. I don't have a lot on him except for the fact that I just enjoy his character. I love when he shows up. But I will say, and I heard this in water cooler talk at work, that a lot of people are kind of complaining about this season 7, because there's been too many, what's going to happen, and somebody shows up at the nick of time. There's a term for that. There's a term for it. I don't know.
Machina?
What?
Dusik Machina?
Maybe, I don't know.
They got in the machine?
Yes, the God in the Machine is what they're saying. It was very much that this season, where it's like Jaime falls in the water and he's got all of his armor on and he's sinking to the bottom. And then at the last minute, Braun pulls him up out of the water. Or something's happening in Benjen Stark, which I wish they would have elaborated on more too. So if I had it my way, this would be a daily show every day forever. And it'd be like a reality show, or like The Simpsons that still is running strong, like how many seasons later? But Benjen Stark shows up and saves the day. And then Daenerys comes flying in on her dragon and saves the day. Like, the guys at work were saying that was something that they didn't enjoy. Now, I've heard the term before, but I've never really gave it much thought.
Right.
And everybody, they're, I guess from what they're reading, but I think because I'm such a fan of the show, and I'm one of those people that will just enjoy it for the enjoyment of it and not break it down to, the writing sucked or the acting was horrible. I have said the acting is horrible in several different movies. However, because I enjoy this, I don't see it.
And a lot of people, if they enjoy something, they can overlook.
Yes, because I'm hanging by the story.
Right. But
we're getting to the point where, and they're saying that, like, for instance, Tyrion, they're saying that Tyrion was this one way up until a certain point, and then when George R.R. Martin stopped really writing it and the creators started writing more, that Tyrion changed. But at the same time, that's the evolution of a character.
See, I don't really see that, a change like you're talking about, so I'm not sure when it was, but to me, Tyrion was always, I mean, yes, he was a drunkard and a womanizer, but I saw him, even when George Martin was writing him through the book, I saw him slowly becoming more...
The way he is now?
I don't want to quite say honorable, but more not quite of a bastard, if you will.
Yeah, well, I mean, but if you think about it, he wasn't given any purpose. He's never had a purpose until now. So, he was the...
Well, I mean, his purpose was to be a thorn in his sister's side. That was his purpose of that, and to annoy his father, and I think that was his purpose in the book, was to...
Speaking of his father, that whole scene when he put the arrow through his dad while he sat on the pot was a beautiful monologue.
Yeah, that was very much out of the book. That was just... Yeah,
it was beautiful. And, the thing is, like, for me, when people are complaining about the writing or whatever of the creators know the end. Right. So they're still writing
with that end
the end in sight. And George is not going to allow them to write anything. I think that's so out there that he can't rein it into the books.
Right.
Which kind of makes me sad, because then are we going to know the books and...
Well, yeah, even if he sticks to what they're doing in the show, there's still quite a bit going on in the books that's not in the show that's going to
make
hit a whammy on things.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back. I talked about Lost earlier. That was one of Lost's problem, was that they were only supposed to be on for a season or two. So they started doing, then they said, well, we're going to extend you. So they started all these extra subplots and all these mysteries in. And they get to the final season. Like, this is the final season. So they're trying to wrap things up. And they weren't really writing towards a conclusion for the entire time. They were throwing things in there, and then they would resolve some of the mysteries online, and some of the things wasn't like the mystery of the numbers. There was like a series of 6 or 8 numbers that was always showing up in the show. And to get a resolution to that, I found out, I used to be on some news groups back in the day, and I guess they revealed the answer to that online somewhere. So, I mean, they weren't really writing until the last season or so for the show, for the ending. They were just throwing whatever they could on the wall. Right. Where this one here, I think they did have a little bit more of a ending in mind, and they're writing to that ending.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
And that could be my ringtone.
Well, I agree.
I agree with you. I agree.
Yeah, but I'm always right. So when you say you agree, when you say I agree,
you're always right. That's it for the final episode of Head Speaks. Thanks for joining us. You'll never hear from me again.
And I get to go shopping.
Head Speaks will be back after these important messages.
After a long day of criminal activity, there's nothing I like better than to sit down and listen to the old radio. Wait a minute, that's not a radio, it's...
Plastic Man! Plastic Man! Plastic Man!
That's right, it's the Plasticast, a brand new podcast dedicated to Plastic Man. I'm your host, Max Romero. Together we'll be talking about Plastic Man in the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and every other age you can think of, right up to his upcoming reappearance in DC Rebirth. We'll also be talking about any Plastic Man news that might be coming up, and his appearances in every media from comics to cartoons. Whew. Makes me woozy just to think about it. I hope you'll join me to talk about the longest arm of the law, here on the Plasticast, here on the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
Plastic Man!
Hey, who likes Wild Dog?
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
No. I am taking this podcast seriously. There's no way that song will appear anywhere in the show or even the commercials. I'm doing this right. I'm FKA Jason of the Silver and Gold podcast. On September 17th, 2016, a new show will be appearing on the S&G feed. Wild Pod, a Wild Dog podcast, is a miniseries covering the DC Comics character that is sort of their answer to the Punisher, Wild Dog. I'll be covering the original 4-issue miniseries, the 1989 special, and various other appearances of Wild Dog. Watch for it at sngpod.com or the Silver and Gold feed on iTunes and Stitcher. Vance, why do we even own that CD?
You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Been snooping on the door. You can wag your tail, but I ain't gonna feed you no more.
And now back to Head Speaks. We didn't talk much about Marjorie. What did you think about Marjorie Terrell?
If I was a guy, she is super hot. That's the first thing I want to say. She's super hot. She's beautiful. Like, and I've always thought
not only
she
her
was
body,
beautiful.
but her face. She's got an exotic looking face. Her eyes.
Yes, I absolutely. She's very.
She's a very beautiful woman.
Very beautiful woman, and her dresses and stuff that showed. I liked that about her. I liked the fashion.
As far as her
in it.
character was a bit of a, I guess in our language we call her a gold digger.
Yes and no. I just thought she was very goal oriented. I think she, especially when I want to be the queen.
Right.
That is a bold statement for any woman in that time frame.
In our parlance, that would make her a gold digger.
No, I don't think so.
Someone that's marrying someone just for the status or for the money or the power makes you a gold digger.
No, I think she did it because she wanted to be the queen.
Right.
And I don't see it as far as... I think she just wanted to be...
the queen.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a gold digger. To me, a gold digger is, will you buy me shoes? Will you, I want buy me a nice car and I'll give you favors.
And that's what she was doing. She was marrying, she was giving him favors. Well, Renly, her brother, was giving him favors. That's another story entirely. But I mean, she was willing to marry anybody that would get her closer to being queen. Or the veteran queen.
Yes and no. I don't know. I just see her.
She was willing to marry Joffrey. She was going to marry Renly. She was, going to marry
But back
Tolman.
then, women had to... I mean, if you were pretty much women in regards to that property.
In that land, that time, yes, that was the way to do things. But as we talked about earlier, just because it was acceptable then doesn't make it right.
Well, no, but I think... No. But what I'm trying to say is, I think she wanted to marry someone that she could control.
Right.
So they couldn't control her. I think she had a lot of her grandmother in her.
Oh, she did. No, she was very devious. She was very controlling.
I think very smart. I don't think it was necessarily... I think she was smart. I think she was smart for her own good. And she used her abilities.
Right.
Her feminine woos, her abilities, to her advantage. And I like that. I guess I've always said God made me look the way I look, being a little heavier set woman. Because had I been a, 5'8" supermodel-esque woman, I probably would be a gold digger. I probably would be in a different situation, a different type of world of work and everything else. Not saying I'd be a hooker because that made it sound horrible, but
she'd be a call girl, an escort,
something. But it's one of those things where it's like, I probably would have been a woman. A womanizer? Not a womanizer.
That's what
I guess a gold digger, if you want to call it that. But I think she used that as a weapon to get what she wanted. But I think it's different in regards to being gold digging and a status building thing, because women were told what to do, when to do it, and everything else, where she knew what she wanted, she had a goal, and she knew how to get that goal.
Right.
And I think she used her assets a little bit more in her favor. I
enjoyed watching that, but again, if I was involved, I mean, I see that she's not a nice person.
See, I thought she was kind of nice, but I think okay, I take that back. She wasn't nice, but she did nice things to get, like, for instance, feeding because they're very fake. I will say that. Now that I think about what I'm saying, I guess because I liked her character so much, I was a little bit more forgiving for what she was doing. Because when she went to the orphanage, and she was feeding all the orphan kids, which my empathy levels were so high, like, I was like, I wanted to cry. But I liked that about her. And I also feel like I think she would have still done that. Almost like she had a Princess Diana-esque essence about her and I think that's where I get that I want to be the queen, because I think she would have done good to build herself up more. And I think that's why I liked her. I guess that's where I'm going with it. I'm sure I'm rambling and people aren't following me at this point, but I just feel like when she said, I want to be the queen, I think she would have done a lot of good had she been able to do it, because her grandmother would have influenced her to do good.
No,
because
I agree that she would have made a good queen if she could have.
Because they were very much that family that if you go back and look at the family in Highgarden, which they came from, there wasn't any poorness in that. They weren't poor. Right. There was no poor in that city. If you read the books, if I'm not mistaken, Highgarden was very much the Beverly Hills of everything. Right. So she came from high standing already, and she's coming into a place that had all that slum and hunger, and I think she would have done a lot of good. And I guess that's why I say what I say, not necessarily. And so that's why it's hard for me to call her a gold digger, because gold diggers are only about themselves. And they're not going to care. I mean...
I can see what you're saying. Yeah, I can kind of agree with that.
So that's why I have a problem with the whole gold digger, quote-unquote, statement. Right. Because I think she would have done more good than we got to see.
Yeah. I'll give you that. I mean...
Because look how she treated Tommen. She could have really worked him. She really could have, because he was the influential little boy.
And I think she was working him, but having said that, I don't know how much of it she was working him to work him and how much of it she was trying to just get over on Cersei.
Yeah, well, yeah, most definitely.
I mean, I don't know.
But she could have completely worked him to a point where she could have planted so many seeds in his head.
Right. And what I think she was planting seeds in her head.
She
did. Tommen was killed, or she was killed right now.
Tommen committed suicide. He jumped out the window.
After she was killed.
Killed, because he was so hard.
She was taken out of the picture by Cersei before she could plant all of it. But I think she was planting seeds. She was trying
because Tommen was definitely lashing out towards his mom.
But I say that's a bad thing, yes. But, planting seeds and trying to manipulate this young boy. But considering the alternative and his mother manipulating him and planting seeds and using him, that poor boy was stuck between a rock and a hard place.
It's hard for me
to fault her too much, because
I agree.
She was battling Cersei, basically.
But I think Marjorie knew how horrible Cersei was.
Oh, yeah.
And really coddled Tommen a little bit. She could have really worked him, but... And I know she did in some regards, but I really feel like it could have been a lot worse for Tommen. Because she could have been like, well, I'm not doing this unless you do this. I'm not... But she just planted the seeds, and he took them, because he was very... he was influenced by her. She influenced him.
But then again, Tommen was very much younger than
Her.
than the other men she's been with.
Yes.
And so, I mean, she couldn't use her feminine wiles.
She did. She
not her body like she does against everyone else, I don't think.
No, she slept with him.
I think she was coming across more as a motherly figure to him.
I will agree with that.
Because, again, he was so young, and that's more what he knew, what he was attracted to, if you will.
No, I think...
Or affected him, I think.
No, I think he liked what he saw. What teenage boy wouldn't have? Think about that for a minute.
And see, again, I'm confused in the book. He was a bit younger in the book.
Yeah, no, he was a teenage boy in the show. So depending on what we're
I keep thinking
about
the book where he again comes off much younger in the book. So
right, and I'm looking at the movie. So I read the TV show.
Right.
So if you look at the TV show, she definitely was influencing him with her body, and she's a beautiful woman,
right.
and she's whispering in his ear all this stuff, and of course he wants to impress her and go out of his way, and this is the first girl he's ever been with, and the whole 9 yards. But I don't know. I just liked her because of the fact that she was so smart in that regard.
Right.
She could have completely just, I don't know. Like, I just thought she was really notorious. Like, I guess that's a good word.
Yeah. No, that's a good description for her. Notorious.
Because she was kind of gangster. Like, if you think, like, she...
What up? I'm gangsta style.
But no, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, that's a good term.
And her grandmother whispered stuff in her ear.
Right,
because the grandmother was like the puppeteer in this whole...
The High Garden Inn, yeah.
Yes.
She wanted her granddaughter to have better than she did.
Yes.
She wanted her granddaughter to be queen. So, yeah... And so I did call her gold digger, but I don't know how much of that was being influenced by Grandma, and so she was being influenced. And again, I'm giving Jamie a bit of a break because of his upbringing. Again, she was much the same to be raised. She was raised by women folk that were powerful and strong, and be raised to be that way. So I do have to give her a bit of a break because of that, because I'm sure her grandmother,
and that's why I don't want to call her a gold digger,
influenced a lot of what she did and who she was. So. I think I will have to take that back.
So say it again.
I ain't saying a damn thing.
Say it again.
I love you, honey.
I'm going to have to play it for you. Yes, you are right. No,
you have a point. How's that?
That works. That works. And I'm going to record that too.
Oh, I need to delete this episode right away.
I was saying, this will be the last time I'm on your show. It was nice talking to you, everybody. But.
Someone we haven't mentioned yet, Samuel Tarly.
I love him. And just because he's... Every good story has a Sam. If you think about, like, The Hobbit, and now this. But
right.
No, in all honesty, though, I think he's a neat character. I love the fact that you find out his lineage through the Wall.
Right.
And who his dad was, the Lord Commander. And... But at the same time, that makes me sad because that means his dad was an asshat to him.
Well, we got that from the show that his dad was an asshat.
Yes.
When they do with him because he was so weak. And I say weak, but he was very much of a caring person, very much... He reminds me of myself growing up.
He has a heart of gold who would do anything for his friends and is a book nerd. So yes, honey, he was very much me growing up. Your new name is now Sam. But yeah, like I liked his character, and I liked that he has a girl. Like the whole
right, he took on one of the wildlings, or she a wildling, or no? She was
part of the
border people. They were on the edge of.
She was made from a guy who banged only his daughters,
right? But they lived on the outside of the wall.
Yes, they weren't wildlings. I forget what they were.
They were like borderline wildlings because they served under the wall and the king and all that, but they were outside of the countryside proper, if you will.
But
that was very much...
Tilly is her name.
Gilly.
There you go, Tilly. Gilly. Yeah, Gilly. I like the fact that Sam, because it still showed his compassion. And it showed his bravery when he tried to get her out of that situation.
Again, he comes across as a bit of a coward, I'm going to say. But it's not so much cowardice. It's just he knows he's weaker. He knows that most people kick his butt. He knows that, he's not the strongest, the smartest, or this or that. But when the chips are down and he's needed to do something, he does it.
And he doesn't complain.
Which makes him, again, most people, his father consider him a coward. But actually, if you actually get to know Samuel, he's actually very brave.
Samuel Tully. I love him. Yeah,
Charlie.
Gosh, what's up with these names? There's just too many of them.
Well, a lot are similar. So.
Yeah, but, it's one of those things where with Sam...
Well, it's like, real quick, on what I was talking about back in Harry Potter, when Dumbledore was talking to the kid you liked, Longbottom. Neville. And he was talking...
Hubba, by the way. The new term is they nevilled up, by the way. If you don't know that term, it was the whole ugly duckling thing where they were, ugly in the show and then they grow up and you're just like, holy smokes, that's Neville?
But Neville in the show he went against his friends and he tried to stop his friends from doing what he thought was wrong. And as Dumbledore was telling him, sometimes it takes more bravery to go against everybody, even though, you may be afraid or you may be this. It's more brave to stand up to someone that's more powerful than you than, say, someone like Jaime Lannister, who is the world's greatest swordsman, who's strong and handsome and all this. He could stand up to somebody. Well, yes, he's brave, but he knows he can kick the guy's butt. Meanwhile, Samuel, he will go up against somebody that he knows he's going to lose against. And again, that's a lot more brave than most of the characters in the show, because most of the characters know if they can't just downright beat somebody, they at least have a good chance of coming out even. Where Samuel knows most of the people he's going up against, I'm sure even Gilly could take him out. So, but he's willing to do what's right because it's right. And again, he's another honorable character. And again, he's very brave, even though, like say, his dad, before he died, would call him a coward and would mock him, and that's why they sent him away to the wall to toughen him up to make him more of a man. Mm-hmm. But
they send him to the wall is because he was a disgrace to the family.
Right.
They didn't want him around.
And they didn't want him inheriting anything and becoming any of the ruler.
They wanted to strip him of all title.
So they sent him to the wall to make him lose his title.
Correct.
Because they thought he was too much of a coward, too much of a weakling. But again, like we've talked about the last couple of minutes, he's one of the strongest characters on the show.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think that's a bold statement. Well,
again, not physically strongest, but maybe morally and bravest. Because again, he's not a warrior. He's not a Jon Snow. He's not this young, handsome guy, good with a sword, good with the ladies, that can, take on any comers. He is, in fact, I would compare him with, we talked about earlier, Theon. Kind of the same, different sides of the same coin. They're both not the most best-looking guys, not the strongest, not the most powerful. Theon, when the chips are down, and again, he's kind of changing that right now, but in times past, Theon would take the easy way. He would do what he's told. He would side with whoever's in power. Whereas Sam, he would do what's right, even though he's not the strongest, he's not the toughest. And like I said, that to me, that takes more bravery than. So that's why I say he's one of the bravest characters in the show, because he's such a weak character per se, but he still won't do what's right, as we talked about.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I think for his character, I think his character serves just a purpose of carrying information through the story. Like,
well, yeah, that is his purpose in the show, in the book. He's the information gatherer, a way to relate information to the reader or the watcher,
without breaking the third wall, kind of thing.
But in doing so, I still say they made him a very brave character.
Yeah, I will agree with you there.
The way they did it.
I agree with you that he's definitely a brave in his own regard. Like, again, like I said, Sansa could have just broken, but she didn't.
Right.
And I like that human condition part where it's like someone has been dealt a very hard situation and they come out changed, but a better person.
And see, to me, Samuel was always that way. I mean, yes, when he first started, he was more scared. He was
a sniveling coward.
Yeah, but I think John helped bring him out. But I think he came out a little quicker. And I don't know, to me, he didn't do as much wrong as Sansa did. So it's easier for me to see him than Sansa.
You just don't like Sansa, admit it.
I've said that. I don't care for her. I don't care for her. And I don't know if I ever will care for her, but I do like her turn in the show that you talked about. I do see that, and I do see, again, she has been through a lot of BS, but I just don't care for the way she started, and I've held that against her for the entire show. So that's who I am. That's what I do. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, holding a grudge. And that's who I am. Okay, so we talked about Samwell.
We really haven't talked much about Daenerys. We've kind of covered her.
I thought about her when we got on another side trip and forgot about her. Daenerys. So what were your thoughts on Daenerys Targaryen? Played by Emilia Clarke, who was in the remake of the reboot or whatever, the Terminator.
I think she's very pretty too. But I think Marjorie's prettier than her, and I think, this is a girl's point of view. I think that, I don't know. I think she's pretty, and a lot of guys are all about the fact that you got to see full frontal nudity on the show with her, but then she ended up signing a contract saying she didn't want to do that anymore. So that's why you don't ever see her whole bits and pieces
anymore. You do see a
anymore.
little bit of profile in this last episode, but
right.
But yeah, you don't see the full.
Nope. She signed off. She decided she didn't want to do that anymore.
Right, I read that article here a while back that she's not any more nude scenes. Yep. The heck with her. No, honestly though, while she is a beautiful woman, I do think that the gal who plays Marjorie, what's her name, Natalie Dormer, is a better looking woman.
Absolutely, but that's not what we're really talking about. We're not talking about that, but
I am. No,
I don't blame you. I can't blame you. At least it's not Jennifer Love Hewitt. We won't go there. That woman. Anyways, her character Daenerys.
I was getting back on track.
You were scared, is what you were, weren't you?
I was getting back on track. I got thinking about Natalie Dormer and had to get back on track where we're at.
No, but for me, I feel like her character... I loved her character at first. I liked the timid... Again, we're going back to the whole princess thing and me showing my really girly girl stuff right now.
Right.
I loved her with Khal Drogo. I loved that. Even though the whole rape scene, and a lot of people are really upset about that, and coming from someone who really doesn't want to hear about that stuff, I thought it was in good taste. It showed it, and it showed the emotion of it, which I thought was... I think they did it very well.
Well, I say with this show, it just didn't exploit, again in quotes, women. They would show men, they would,
But a lot of people, there's people literally... I run a geek crafting group on Facebook. We've got 8,000 members. And in this group... there are women who, and some guys, but mostly the women who, when we mention a Game of Thrones thing, they'll flip out on us. And what I mean by flip out, they'll be like, I am never watching that show because of the way they portray women and blah, blah, blah. And I understand that you don't like the fact that women are portrayed a certain way. However, it's a story, so get over yourself. However, my biggest beef on that is that time period. It doesn't make it right. I will say that because I keep hearing that this time around, but I'll say that to get that out of the way so you don't have to repeat yourself. But the whole thing is that's what women were property.
Right.
And I like the fact that they brought that up because it made another real aspect for me about that show. And watching women, Daenerys and Sansa, go from being these weakling women to these very strong women was intriguing for me.
I agree.
And, that's the reason why I thought Wonder Woman was really cool. If you want to kind of it's kind of weird that I'm tying Wonder Woman into Game of Thrones, but I'm going to do it anyways. I mean, it's not that Wonder Woman was a weak character, because it's really not where I'm going with it. But the fact of the story of that this woman can be a very strong individual with the brains, and it's not about selling their body to make like Marjorie.
Right.
The reason why I like those characters so much is because there's more to them than just a pretty face.
Right.
So, and with Wonder Woman, the movie, I love that movie because it wasn't about her being this gorgeous woman because she was freaking hot, but it was about Wonder Woman doing Wonder Woman things. Right. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Wonder Woman things?
Yes, Wonder Woman things.
And and that's what I want my daughter to be. I want my daughter to be a very beautiful woman, but I want her to be smart and powerful and confident. And I see that in some of these women in the show. And that's what I like about them. So for me, for Daenerys, having her start out as property and being sold and given to this creature, this human, and he was gargantuan compared to this little woman. In real life, this woman is barely like 5'1" or something crazy like that. And Jason Momoa, who plays Khal Drogo, is gargantuan, like just humongous. And so I feel like she rose from that. Like, in how much of it is Munchausen syndrome? Because she was kind of in a way given to him and he raped her and she fell in love with him. So really, how much of that is that Munch? But then Sansa didn't fall in love with Tyrion, or she didn't fall in love with... And really, I was kind of hoping she did kind of fall in love with Tyrion because he was so kind to her. Like, he didn't ever expect her to have sex with him or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, when you said Tyrion, I was thinking Joffrey, but I'm like, what? What are you suggesting? Yeah, you looked at me really weird, but... And Tyrion said, oh no, she said Tyrion. Wait a minute, never, that's fine, that's fine. Yeah. Tyrion's... But going back to Daenerys again with the whole Khal Drogo thing, I think that was really neat. And she ends up really loving him. And really, to be honest with you, he treasured her. I loved their relationships and how it grew. They called her his moon and stars. You know, like, that to me, there's like a romantic Harlequin essence about that whole storyline and that arc, you know, and how she got this whole tribe of savage people to follow her. She has to be very charismatic. I don't care how strong her king was. Right. If they didn't like her, they didn't like her. And there could have been a whole other ballgame when it came to how they related to Khal Drogo and her. But in the end, they called her the Khaleesi. Like, she was the queen of everything. I was just looking at, she's 5'2". 5'2". And Jason Momoa is 6'4". See? So I was almost... Yeah. Like a foot and 2 inches on her. So you can imagine. And the first scene they ever filmed was a sex scene together. So just a little, again, my reading of crazy, weird stuff on the internet. Head of useless knowledge. That's me. Yep. But, you know, I liked that. And then I will say, one of my favorite scenes was when Khal Drogo pours gold on Viserys' head and gives him his own crown. Like, what a great scene. I think that's what sealed the deal for me on the show. I really do. Like, that was one of those where you were just like, oh, damn. Like, you weren't expecting. Very brutal, very savage. Heck? Yeah. Yeah, just, holy smokes. I wasn't, you know people are going to die, but you don't realize how. It gets very brutal. Yeah, I loved that. You know, so I think that was a huge turning point in the fact where I enjoyed the show. And then I was just hooked. Someone else we haven't brought up yet? Red Wedding. Oh, if you want to talk about the Red Wedding? No, I don't want to talk about the Red Wedding. Would you want to talk about Hodor? Oh, Hodor. Let's start the Red Wedding, then we'll go to something, I would say happy, but that's still sad. We're going to have to find a happy mark because for those of you, well, I'm sure you've never brought this up, but my poor husband, at night, we get maybe one show to watch together before he has to crash out to go to bed because he gets up earlier than I in the morning. So I'm always begging, can we at least watch one show? And then if the show is a horrible show like Game of Thrones that makes me feel all sad, he ends up having to watch like a Disney show afterwards just so I can be happy. So, I think we're going to have to end this show on a happy note. We'll have to find something. I don't know if we're going to find something in Game of Thrones that's happy. Probably not. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure what's a happy moment. But if we want to talk about the Red Wedding, I watched it by myself, people. By myself in a room, all alone. Aaron was in the living room watching TV with our son. And I came walking out after the show was over.
I think we were watching Arrow or something like that.
And I walked in and I didn't even step into the living room. I just stood. We have a step down living room that comes in where you end up from the dining room to the living room. And I'm standing there and I can't talk. But when I do talk, I end up sounding like a sailor because all I could do was say every cuss word I possibly could come up with to even remotely express what I was feeling. I have never been so horrified, so shocked, so... Even now, it still produces those same horrified... And the show, that's what the show's done for me. Like, it really has. Not to that extent, but when you watch a show with your hands over your face and your jaw open, and you're peeking through because you can't look away train wreck-wise, it's a great show. But the whole Red Wedding just... I did not see that coming. And then at that point, from then on, I didn't trust anything. And it was just horrific. Like, and just to talk about it, that's where Robb Stark, they will all come in, who was a cousin? It was a cousin that was getting married to the Freys. And I forget why he was marrying them. Wasn't it
marrying him to try to bring the two clans together.
Yes. And Walder supposedly had pledged to the Starks that he was going to be a bannerman.
And that's, because Robb was promised to one of Walder's daughters. And he ended up falling in love with some other girl. And they ended up getting married, which kind of upsets
It was an insult.
Walder Frey.
It was an insult because he wanted to have the main Stark. I mean, he knew what Robb was supposed to be, and then...
Well, because at this point his dad was dead, and he was the ruler of Winterfell.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So Robb kind of told him to go...
Pound
sand, and that he was going to marry who he wanted to marry, and so they decided to marry off the cousin. Well, because of that, it kind of insulted the Freys. And the Freys decided to get revenge, and that's why they planned at the wedding, after they took the cousin out of the room to go consummate the marriage, they pretty much, Walder did this big old speech, and then all these people walked up behind the Starks and Robb and stabbed his pregnant wife, and then Catherine, which is the mom, watched them slit. Did they slice his throat or just stab him multiple times? I think they just stabbed him. And what's funny, if those of you who haven't seen it, which I don't know if they're going to be listening to this if they haven't seen it at this point.
And real quick, it was Edmure Tully, which was Caitlyn's brother. They were marrying off to one of the Walder girls.
Okay, yeah.
So it was Robb's uncle.
There you go.
I had to look and see because that's what I do.
The thing is, though, is like, isn't she beautiful?
Yeah, that's Diana Rigg who played Deathstorm.
Yes. But
anyway, so the Red Wedding, Edmure and one of the Frey girls got married, went upstairs to get killed, and
he didn't get killed though. If I'm not mistaken, he did not get killed. They held him hostage. Yeah,
hostage, right?
No, they didn't kill him.
It was the Starks who were all killed. The wedding.
And that's about the time that Arya shows up with the Hound.
Right.
And
just not see her entire family get
no,
not her entire family, but
no, she sees Robb's head. No, the wolf's head on Ralph's body. They had killed the wolves and took Robb's direwolf's head and put it on top of Robb's body.
Right.
And he comes riding out on a horse, and then that's when the Hound turns her around and takes her out. Which, again, makes me like the Hound even more. Because I just think he's got a heart of gold that we're not seeing.
Well, yeah, the show has a lot of people that come across as bad people, but they've actually, like I said, they have a heart of gold. They actually got something decent about them. They're not... And I think that's one thing that makes this show so enjoyable and people like it so much, is that they could all be presented as one-dimensional, Halen's a bad guy or this or that, but they all got their own character traits, their own flaws. And even the bad guys, in quotes, have something redeeming about them.
Which is the human condition. Like,
I don't know if I think anything with Cersei's redeemable yet, but...
she loves her kids to a fault.
Yeah.
Speaking of kids, do you think she's really pregnant?
I don't know anymore.
I think she is, but...
She acts like it, but it's hard to say with her.
I think she is, and I'll tell you why I think she is. I think it would be here's another theory I'm going to go with. I'm going to do a spoiler, guys. No, I'm kidding. I think she is pregnant, but I also think if you look at one of the last things we see, I think in the last episode of season 7, when Tyrion is walking in through the boat's quarters, and he knows that Jon and Daenerys are bumping uglies.
Right.
The look on his face, to me, was a look of sadness. And the reason why I think it's sadness is because I feel like when he went and talked to Cersei.
Right.
And she was hell-bent on not going back to the group to talk to them about helping Daenerys beat the White Walkers.
Right.
Something major had to have changed her mind.
See, and maybe I'm wrong, but I got the impression when she showed up, he seemed surprised also.
I think he's playing the part. But I think he told her something along the lines, and this is where I could be wrong, but I have a feeling he struck a deal with her. And I think the deal could possibly be that he will make sure that her kid is on the Iron Throne. Or he's going to betray Jon and Daenerys somehow to help to help Cersei. Because otherwise, I don't think she would come back.
Well, again, but see, truthfully though, she didn't come back. She did, but she was lying to him and wasn't going to send her men anyways. So, I mean...
But I think she had that planned already.
So and again, you may be right, but I don't know as if he made a deal with her. I think if she did come back, again in quotes, it was to save the life of her unborn child. And
she did that by striking a deal with Tyrion.
But let's say in theory that's what happened. But if she doesn't send men, do you think I think that she's smart enough to know that if she doesn't send the men to actually help out, he's not going to take his end of the bargain. Or she's setting him up too. That's a possibility, but I don't know. I just don't. I think that she's setting him up to fail because she hates his guts so much. But in the process, she's going to get what she wants out of him first. Right. That's a possibility. I just don't. So I think he is going to do something to betray them early on. He's going to sell himself out. I would hope not, but because I like Tyrion. He's come across as a drinker and a womanizer. That's why I like. He comes across as a drinker and a womanizer, but as we've said, he's got a heart of gold and he does things that he feels is best. And like he told his sister, the reason he stands behind Daenerys is that he thinks she would make a good leader or a good ruler. Right. And again, like I said, Daenerys is much like his sister, hot-headed and wants to do what needs to be, she thinks it needs to be done. But unlike Cersei, she's willing to put people in place to kind of check her and to keep her from making bad decisions. But on that same regard, he knows his sister's weakness. Right. And her only major weakness is her children. Right. So he's going to use that to get he wants from her. Right. So it could be that he is going to, in some regard, I'm going to add a little bit more to my thought. Some regard, he's going to end up betraying Jon and Daenerys, or at least it looks like he is betraying them. But in the process, maybe he's actually going to betray Cersei. Kind of double cross her. Yes. And that I could see happening. I could see him doing that, making her think that he's going to betray them, but then in actuality, turn around and not. But I don't think he's going to let
Daenerys and Jon know that. And I think that's where his sadness might be stemming from, is that he knows that he's going to be doing something rather wrong. Because I don't see Tyrion hasn't showed a lot of sadness through the whole series. So he knows something.
See, I thought he just had more feelings for Daenerys than he should.
I don't think that. Because
that's what I first thought, but then again, he's smart enough to realize that someone like him is not going to be with someone who didn't like Daenerys.
No.
So, I mean, I'm undecided on that because, again, I say he is smart enough to realize that, Daenerys isn't going to be with him no matter what, just because of the way he looks. And not to insult Daenerys, but I don't see Daenerys being with someone like him.
I see them more as being friends.
Right.
And really, I mean, if you want to do the whole thing, she's pretty much put Jara in a friend zone forever. Poor Jara. But if you want to go that route and talk about Tyrion as love life, what about Shay? Remember Shay?
Yes. His whore.
Yes. I hate her now. I liked her because she was a strong woman I liked her, like how she would just say, I don't want to talk about that no more. I liked her. But then when I saw when she was sleeping with his father too, that
she
was
lied about him on the stands.
Yes,
was sleeping with his father, and so he choked the crap out of her.
It's funny how I haven't thought about all these other supporting characters until we started.
Through so many.
Yeah.
Ygritte.
I like Ygritte. She kind of annoyed me though. I don't know. There was something about her that just didn't sit well.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, she could get annoying.
She was a very disposable character for me. I really could care less if she lived or died.
Yeah.
I think she was just there to pop Jon's cherry and move on.
Well, and to bring him into the
manhood stage.
Well, not manhood, but bring him in more into the wildlings fold, if you will, and to make him feel something more for the wildlings.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I don't know. To me, not that it was wasted space, because I think it was a neat storyline and it gave him... I do like some of it where when he killed her or saw her being killed, that was kind of neat. But I don't know. She was nothing to me. I like, if you want to talk about supporting characters that really don't have major roles, but I like them. I like Grey Worm. And I like...
Yeah, Grey Worm's cool. I like Grey Worm.
Grey Worm is really cool. Don't say was, because he's still alive. That made me sad right now.
Oh, you haven't heard? No.
And then, what's the translator's name? I can't think of her name all of a sudden.
Melisandre?
Yeah.
Yeah, Melisandre. Something like that.
Yeah. I really like her. I like her character a lot. I like their love story. I like the fact that Grey Worm actually got some with her, not because I wanted him to get some, but because it was really, it evolved his character.
Right.
Because he has been castrated, because he doesn't have man parts, he didn't know really how to... I just thought it was a neat, intimate moment that was really kind of soft in the story.
Right.
And with all the hard stuff that goes on in the story, it was nice to have a soft, tender moment between two characters. And I liked that. It kind of broke it up for me a little bit.
Right.
Other characters. Hodor. Poor Hodor. What a well-written character.
Well, one thing about Hodor, like I say, it shows, Bran has the abilities to basically travel through time, look through time, he can affect the past, but it's the way they treat it is that what's happened, what's going to happen's already happened, because, again, Hodor was who he is. He's a simpleton. He could only say one word, Hodor, and that's what they started calling him by Hodor, because that's the only word he could say. But that happened because of Bran in the future, which was our present, going into the past.
You and your time travel stuff.
He went to the past mentally and
did you see my eyes gloss over right now?
I saw that. And took over Hodor's body to save them, so... Yeah.
But I just think that was he was a real well-written character. And the fact that the actor is really some British DJ guy, which blows me away.
Online here, Kristan Narian.
Yeah. And what's funny is...
Northern Irish actor and DJ.
Yeah, he's a DJ. He's a huge DJ. Like, he's really famous DJ, which is so funny. Like, I've seen some videos of him on Facebook, on YouTube and stuff. But, just another useless fact. When the part where they actually show him naked...
Right.
They literally had a prosthetic on him. And they put glue on him. And you can imagine having glue down there. But,
right.
And it took hours for them to do. And it blows my mind to think that. But the character himself, the Hodor character, the amount of acting ability you have to only have one word through a whole show.
Right.
And be able to convey emotion and...
I was going to say, he's able to express his emotion on his face and emote without...
For a DJ.
With only saying, with only having one line that he repeats over and over.
And people fell in love with the character.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it reminds me of Stephen King's The Stand, Moon. And the guy just says, M-O-O-N, that spells moon. Like, I don't know. I always thought Hodor and Moon, the same thing. But
apparently he's a DJ in a gay nightclub in Belfast.
Yeah. I loved the character. And... What are you humming about?
I was just reading on a tour called The Rave of Thrones in the U.S. and Australia.
Yeah.
Back in 2014.
But...
Came out as gay. He's 6'11".
He's humongous.
He's talking about Khal Drogo being 6'4". He's even taller than that. He's a tall mofo.
I know I keep saying it was really well written. Well written for it being one word. Yeah. But I meant as the character's progression and what they did with the character and how devastated everybody was when you find out that Hodor means hold the door. Like, I almost want to start crying right now. Like, it's so emotional to me. Because it just breaks my heart knowing that that's what he got stuck saying. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I think that's why I enjoy this show so much is because of the stories that are played. And it's all fantasy-based. And fantasy-based is definitely, like, my favorite thing.
Right.
I'm the Lord of the Rings, D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. But I haven't played D&D, but for the first time recently. But as far as, like, role-playing and stuff, doing other things that I've done, and the whole princesses and knights. And we haven't even touched on something. The dragons.
I was just saying, I was waiting for you to end about Hodor, then I was going to bring up
the dragons.
The dragons.
How do you even start? First of all, I have to say, the CGI on the dragons, phenomenal.
Yes, I agree. I enjoy, of course, I'm half blind anyways.
For a TV show.
I think the CGI on that's done very good.
For a TV show, and it's HBO, yeah, it's a little bit different. But for a TV show, they really have foot the bill for those dragons.
Right.
And that says a lot with the quality that they're producing with the show.
Oh, yeah. No, very much so.
And they use them in a lot of the episodes. And it might not be for a large time, but you this last season, you got to see Daenerys ride the dragon, land with the dragon, and walk down the dragon's leg.
Oh, yeah. No, they've done a fantastic
That was impressive.
Job.
Because usually it looks like a little tiny blurred out figure riding a dragon. And then they land and you could tell the footing's kind of off or whatever the case may be. And when it happened... I
can't tell these things because I'm half blind, so...
And when it happened, though, I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it to be that, oh, crap, they messed up, you know? But... No, to me, I mean, and I'm sure some of your viewer or listeners are going to disagree with me on that, but I liked it. I liked the dragons. And
no, I agree. I thought they did a very good job with the dragons. I like whenever the dragons show up, anyone that sees them, first Tyrion, and then we see
Tyrion.
Tyrion is dead. Tyrion, the crap, and then.
Jamie Lannister has the best response ever.
That's what I think, Jamie.
Between the dragons and the Dothraki, that poor man, it looks like he's going to have a heart attack every time one of those two show up.
And then we show up there at the big powwow with everybody. The dragon, she shows up on the dragon, and we're like, holy, what the heck?
She made her grand entrance. But I will say, Cersei really did a good job of having a resting face.
Oh, yeah. No, Cersei did a good job not showing...
her reaction to that.
Right.
which I think is kind of cool. Like, I like how we haven't really, but going back to dragons before we even get into her, when we saw the dragon die and go into the water,
Right.
there was not a thought in my mind at that moment for a good couple minutes, oh crap, that dragon's gonna die and the White Walkers are gonna use it. But the moment we saw those chains and then pulling, the fear that came over me was amazing, because now they have a weapon
Of mass destruction.
against Daenerys, who has these dragons that she's used to her benefit.
Well, not only do they have a dragon to use against her, but
That's her kid.
yeah, she's talked about in the show. She told Jon this last episode, the episode before, that the dragons are her children.
Yes.
She believes she'll never have children. She believes that these are the only children she'll ever have, and she loves them much like some people love their pets. I don't understand that, but that's another story entirely. But she loves these as if they were her children. So that's gonna be the thing this next season when she meets up in battle with one of her children against her. I think that's going to wreak some havoc on her.
Yeah, well, because she's going to have to destroy it in some way,
Right.
whether it be dragon glass or whatever the case may be. And I'm wondering if dragon glass is going to kill them, because they created the dragon glass.
Who created the dragons?
The dragons, when they
Right.
blew fire on whatever stoner, I think that's what I heard. At least and I could be mistaken, but
I still think it would kill the dragon, even though
you think so, because
Yeah.
he's a White Walker
because
now?
he's a White Walker
Okay, well,
or a White Flyer.
more than likely. Yeah, one flyer.
But I don't think the fact that dragons in general kind of created I think dragon glass is kind of like volcanic glass, is what I'm kind of gathering.
Well, that's what. What I mean by creating is that their fire created
Right,
it.
but I don't think that's going to have any. I don't think that's going to have any bearing. I think it's going to be a bigger piece of it, but
Yeah.
I don't think that you can just scratch the dragon with it. I think you do some damage with it, and that's going to be the problem, getting a big enough
Piece
weapon
of whatever.
formed.
I think it's going to be
Dragon
dragon
glass.
against dragon. I really do. It's going to
Or
be
they could
rider
burn- they
against
could burn them
rider.
up because they're vulnerable to fire also.
And then the wall. When they blew up the wall. When the dragon came and blew the blue flame and burned down the wall. And poor Tormund.
Tormund.
These names really are too close. Tormund,
Yeah, a lot of names are
Tormund.
too close and too odd for...
I think he had a bucket of letters and he just shook them up and pulled them out. That's how I'm...
Probably.
But,
Let's put these together. He had a Scrabble board next to him. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let's throw these letters together.
exactly.
And come on. The heck? What are you doing over there, George?
But I'm really worried about him. I'm hoping he hasn't died in this. I don't think he has, because I think they would have showed him, because he would have had a better death than just the wall being destroyed.
No, I think he will survive.
I think he and Brienne need to hook up. I think that the whole play on with that would be funny, but
I don't know. I kind of want to see Brienne get with Jaime.
no.
Yes.
No, I mean, I wanted that too at some point, but now I want her to be with
Maybe
the
have a
guy
three-way and all three of them can get together and live happily ever
I wouldn't
after.
put it past Game of Thrones. We've seen that already in Game of Thrones.
This is true.
It's okay when it's in a three-way. It's not gay when it's in a three-way. With a honey in the middle, there's some leeway.
But yeah, the dragons, the whole I'm their mother thing always kind of irritated me with Daenerys. I don't know why. I get it. It's the whole premise of her character.
Right.
But that's one thing I didn't like about it. I didn't like the fact that she was mother of dragons. I don't know. There's something about it that I just didn't care
See,
for.
that bothers me less than people in real life claiming their dogs are their kids. And we know people like that. They'll buy them Christmas
We're not
gifts.
going to go
and
there. We're not going to go there,
buys
honey.
them, But anyways, there's people in real life that thinks that their animals are their kids. Her thinking that she's the mother of the dragons bothers me less. It doesn't bother me for some reason.
And I'm the opposite.
I don't know.
They say opposites attract.
That's why you're with me. Oh.
So, there's the dragons. We talked about Hodor. Talked about Jon. talked about all the Stark kids. We talked a little bit about Catherine and Ned. I think that's really all the we haven't talked about Cersei.
Yeah. We talked about it briefly on and off.
I think
we talked about her.
Yeah, but we really haven't showcased her.
No, we've talked about her
in a roundabout way.
In connection to other characters.
Yes. For her, and we haven't talked about Joffrey.
He's dead, who cares?
Cersei, to me, is an amazing character in her own right. I don't like her because you're not supposed to like her.
Right.
But Cersei in general, the character, what a neat character. She's so strong-minded, so powerful in her own thought process, very confident.
Yeah.
Very conniving to a point of a fault. But she's smart. But she's dumb at the same time. It's like it's like the weird thing. Like you know what I'm saying though? Like
yeah, no, I agree. I can't argue.
I guess she's arrogant is the best way to describe it. She's got an arrogance about her, but
yeah,
very feminist in some aspects.
Militant feminist.
Yeah, there you go. But there's something about her. I can't keep my eyes off her because she's just. Leona Hensley, I think is her name. Yes. Leona or something like that.
Leona Hensley. She was in the Terminator Sarah Chronicles, the Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, the Terminator TV show they had a few years back. She played Sarah Connor in there.
Yeah. I think she's a great actress. I think she has played her. I almost felt sorry for her when she was being shamed by that group of people. Like, my heart hurt for her a little bit.
I'm sorry, it's Lena Headey.
Wow, we were totally wrong.
Lena Headey.
Lena Headey.
Headey.
Headey?
Headey. Okay,
Headey.
She's
phenomenal. She's just a great actress. I think she's just a strong character. Like, I love everything about Cersei, but I love to hate her. And that leads into Joffrey. Joffrey is probably, in my eyes, the most hated character I've ever felt hate for in anything I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah.
You were rooting for him to die. In every episode, you were waiting with bated breath for him to die. And but the guy who did him, Jack something or other. Jack
be nimble, Jack be quick.
I think his name's Jack. He actually quit acting after he did Joffrey.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. You told me about that. Jack Gleason.
Jack Gleason, yes. He did some theater or whatever, but he just decided it wasn't for him. But he said that people would come up to him and chew him out in public. Like that.
And that's the stupid thing, that people take this seriously enough to yell at somebody in public or maybe that's just how great of an actor he is that someone actually can't separate the two.
And that's what he said. He took it as a compliment, but he ended up just not he ended up doing some charity stuff or something because
he currently runs his own touring theater company.
Yes.
Whose debut show called Bears in Space premiered in Ireland in 2016.
Yeah, so he does theater, but he's quit the acting,
right? Yeah,
TV and all that. But yeah, it's kind of like the guy from Arrow. What's his name?
The main guy?
Yeah. You're fired.
Arrow. Oliver Queen. Shoot, I can't think of his name now. Keep talking.
He was walking down the streets and someone jumped him. He was with his kid.
I hadn't heard about that.
He was walking in the street. Someone jumped him because they wanted to fight Arrow.
And again, people are stupid. Stephen Amell.
Yeah. And so I guess he didn't press any charges or something against the guy, but the guy was trying to beat him up because he wanted to fight Arrow.
And these people will need to be in a hospital or something because that's just...
Yeah.
He's an actor. It's called acting.
He pretends. He gets paid to pretend.
Yes. That's the life.
Yeah, really. But I'm sure there's a lot more to it. Like, I don't want to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, no, it's hard work for them to get up and spend a lot of time doing, you know.
Away from their families
Right.
and everything else yeah. But, you know, I was thinking, though, you've got all these characters, especially people like Bran, who now is a lot older from what they started. When you look at the first
Right.
episodes from 2 years for those kids is going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
Especially like Maisie Williams, who plays Arya.
Well, that's one reason why a lot of times, like these shows about TV shows and things, that when about like high school students, usually they'll get people that are in their 20s or 30s that look young.
Right.
And I talked about this elsewhere, that because if you have a teenager playing a teenager, well, it's more realistic, but teenagers are going through a weird moment in their life and they're changing from kids to adults. And the kid come in one day looking one way, and the very next day he could change overnight. His voice could change, or her, but their voice could change. They could, facial features could change, start growing hair or whatever. And then that's why they use adults a lot of times for playing teenagers. It's just, you can't get an adult to play a 10-year-old. So
Disney does it all the time. Disney is notorious for that. A lot of some of the newer shows they don't, but like High School Musical and all of those were all played by older
Well, I said Beverly Hills 90210, those were all teenagers, but they were mostly adults playing teenage roles.
Right.
Just because, like, say...
Look at Ralph Macchio. How old was he when he filmed Karate Kid?
He was in his 20s, I believe.
Yeah, and he looked so young.
Yeah.
I was heartbroken when I found that out, by the way. As a kid who had a crush, he was my first movie crush. To find out he was married and had a kid just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, Ralph Macchio is currently 55 years old.
Wow.
He's older than I am.
That's old, as my daughter would say.
He was born in 1961, so you figure Karate Kid came out in the mid-80s. So 60, yeah, he was in his mid-20s.
Yeah. And he played like a 15, 16-year-old.
And he played Danny Russo. I'm just IMDb-ing and looking right now to see what year it was it came out. Karate Kid came out in 84.
Yep, there you go. I was how old?
In 84? You were young.
Yeah. And how old were you?
I was...
older.
I was 14.
As the boys would say, my beginning in your...
Yes, middle.
Middle.
I was going to go to high school at that point.
Yeah. But
in fact, I started high school in 84.
I was still playing Barbies.
Me too. No, I'm sorry.
No, you just wanted a Barbie at that point. But no, I think that's all the characters.
There's a bunch more...
Yeah, supporting.
That no one cares about. But yeah, those are the main characters.
Melisandre. We got to talk about the red lady with the whole ghoul thing coming out of her hoochie hoochie.
Yeah. And again, she was...
I still don't understand. I mean, I understand that she gave birth to the thing that slit Renly's throat.
Right. It was a shadow creature.
A shadow creature, which caused Brienne to go all crazy. But I just feel like... I don't know.
The same thing that threw... the Elder Tier Greyjoy off the bridge.
I don't remember that.
So I think they glossed over in the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that's how it happens in the show.
In the book, if I remember, I think they played it differently in the books. In the book, they actually, her and, who was it? Was it Davos?
Davos Seaworthy.
I think he went with her on that one. And she birthed out a shadow creature that threw him off of the bridge or whatever in their area, and that's how he died in the book. Again, I think they kind of underplayed that in the show for some reason. I think he died, but I don't remember. I think he was just mentioned in passing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are your final thoughts on Game of Thrones?
I love it.
I like the look on your face. I love it.
I'm going to be really sad when it ends, to be honest with you, because I've never experienced a TV show in any right that...
How about Spartacus? Anything like that?
I enjoyed Spartacus. I still haven't finished. I need to go back. I was watching Spartacus when I found Game of Thrones.
Okay.
And then after Game of Thrones, I still have Tudors. I bought Tudors and I haven't watched that. And then I want to watch Westworld, too. So there are other shows that I'm hoping will have the same
And once you get done with Game of Thrones, you can go watch these other shows and you have time now.
Yeah, right. But I don't know. For me, Game of Thrones was a new experience for me in regards to how I allowed it to play with my emotions, because I'm a very safe TV watcher. If it's not comedy like Big Bang Theory or, those kind of, and those I'm really limited too. I don't like the cop shows. I don't like the lawyer shows. Anything that's going to make me feel sad in any regard, I won't watch it. People will tell me, hey, you should watch this movie. And the first thing out of my mouth is always, will it make me cry? And if it makes me cry, I don't want to watch it because my empathy levels are through the roof. And I just can't handle that. And so there's even kids' movies I refuse to watch, like The Golden Compass, because they threw an animated ferret against the wall and it broke my heart. And I made them turn the movie off. So for Game of Thrones to be not a safe bet in any regards, I think it's very much out of my characteristic. But for me, it was just enjoyable. I loved it. And the storytelling was phenomenal. And I'm going to be really sad when it's gone. What?
Is Game of Thrones over?
Next season.
In a year? 2 years?
Yeah.
Well, and this is normally the point where I ask people to tell where they can find you. But since you don't do any podcasting yet, though now that you've done an episode, maybe you'll get into podcasting and you'll start
this
between
is your
other crafting and kids and everything else.
You can catch me on Moss Creations via Facebook or on Instagram, Tumblr's by Moss Creations, where I do create nerdy 30-ounce stainless steel cups. Kind of plugging myself there, babe.
That's fine. I think I put the Firestorm one she made me on the page before. I'll probably repost it and I'll add a link to her Facebook page in the show notes.
I can definitely, those of you who are Game of Thrones fans, I definitely have a bunch of stuff hoarded for creating different types of style of cups and shirts and all of that fun stuff. So, and I'm kind of not disappointed, but our oldest son is going to be having a baby in April, but they're not really nerdy type people. And so I was like, well, I can make them a Game of Thrones onesie that says, I'm not a princess, I'm a Khaleesi, but I think it'd fall short on them. So I'm kind of bummed out over that.
It's for us.
Yeah. I guess when the baby comes over here, we can put them in our geeky stuff, right?
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, as I talked about before, my oldest son fell far from the tree as far as geek relation. They've gotten closer and closer. I'm just afraid when Grayson gets a little bigger, how much of a geek he's going to be. Or he's going to be the complete opposite direction and be the jock. And
I think that's where we're headed with this one. The one that pulls a chair in front of a recliner and tries to jump across the room. So,
I would say I really like her work, but I am kind of partial to her. But no, she does really fantastic work. I love my Firestorm cup she made.
So Moss Creations.
So check her out on Facebook and the Instagram place over there. I never don't use that one, but well, anyways, thank you for talking with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to give us some dinner, and I will have you back on here when I can.
Sounds good to me.
All right, hold tight for some commercials, and I'll be right back.
Headspeaks will be back after these important messages.
Steph.
What?
Have you ever read a Superman comic?
Not in the last few hours.
Oh, I was just checking, right? Just checking.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Bailey, and I have been a fan of Superman for as long as I can remember. In 1987, I started collecting the Superman comics as a going concern, which led me down a long and winding comic book-filled path to 2007, when I first started podcasting. Well, it's 2017, and because it's been 10 years since I started podcasting, and 30 years since I started reading Superman full-time, I thought it might be fun to start a new show called It All Comes Back to Superman. It All Comes Back to Superman will be my monthly reaffirmation of my Kryptonian faith, where I will pick out something about the Man of Steel and discuss it. Sometimes I'll be alone. Sometimes I'll have a guest. No matter how many people get involved, Superman will be the focus. It all comes back to Superman as part of the Fortress of Baileytude podcasting network. New episodes will drop on the 28th of every month. This show and all of the other programs that are part of the Fortress of Baileytude podcasting network can be found at www.fortressofbaileytude.com.
Hi, my name's Johnny Slick, and I'm the host of the Straight Shot Radio podcast. With all the crazy health fads and fitness trends out there, it's hard to make sense of what's real and what's not. That's why each week I answer your health and fitness questions and interview doctors, coaches, trainers, athletes, and everyday gym goers to provide you with a no-nonsense approach to fitness knowledge. Straight Shot Radio is available on Podbean and iTunes, or you can check us out at straightshottraining.com.
And now back to Head Speaks. And now it's time for...
Faster than a speeding bullet.
In the great hall of the Justice League,
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. This is
What's in Head's Longbox.
Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind. The world's greatest super friends.
On today's episode of What's in Head's Longbox, we're going to continue our look at the Atom. Today we're going to look at the Sword of the Atom Special number 3. It was covered in 1988. Again, to buy it on sale, hop in your DeLorean and go back to February the 2nd of 1988. And the cover price on this bad boy was $1.50. The editor for this book was Mike Carlin. This book had no actual title for the actual story. The writer, once again, as usual for these stories, is Jan Strand. And I'm probably mispronouncing Jan's last name. The penciler, no longer Gil Kane as we've been having. Today it's Pat Broderick, who I think is a wonderful artist. I'm going to lay my cards on the table now. He's from the Firestorm book, but that's another story entirely. The inker was Dennis Janke. Letter, Albert Tobias de Guzman. Colorist, Pete Skotsberg. The cover artist, penciled by Pat Broderick and Dennis Janke. Or is that Yankee? Janke, whatever his name is. This was reprinted in the Sword of the Atom trade paperback, which came out in 2007, which I still need to purchase. Again, the credits and the synopsis I'm about to read and the comments is all from Mike's Amazing World of Comics. Check them out. They do a good job. The comments on this, as we talked about last month, between the special number 2 and this book, they had a little thing called the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this is technically Ray's, aka the Atom's, first post-crisis appearance. Again, his adventures appear to be continuing. Nothing's changed with them. The post-crisis Atom is considered to be entirely independent from his Earth 1 counterpart. Though again, it's just for technicality's sake because nothing really changes, but I just wanted that out there for you. Again, the synopsis for Mike's Amazing World of Comics. The Atom and Loetha are diplomatic guests in the city of the Skull Riders following the downfall of the tyrant Torbil. The new leader of the city, named Drogo, gives the Atom permission to enter Torbil's laboratory, which contains alien technology. Considering they're all aliens. Anyways, after breaking into the lab, the Loethan discovers a booby trap. They exit before the lab explodes. Drogo is angry and forces the Atom to wait before exploring other labs in the city. While waiting, Drogo and hundreds of people in the city fall ill. The illness is thought to be caused by a virus unleashed from the destroyed lab. The Atom, of course, is blamed. He and Loethan try to leave the city, but they are imprisoned. Before Drogo can rule on the punishment of the prisoners, he dies. Hundreds of others perish from the plague,
as well and are burned in a pit just outside the city. Drogo himself is burned on a funeral pyre. While burning, Drogo rises from the dead, but his body is consumed by the fire. The Adam and Loaitha use the confusion to try to make their escape. The townspeople blame them for the plague and give chase. When they reach the city gates, the Adam and Loaithan find that the dead outside the gates have risen from the dead. The zombies fight their way into the city, forcing the Adam to retreat. He and Loaithan escape by air by hitching a ride on a skull. The city below them burns as they make their escape. After taking refuge for the night in the jungle, Adam and Loaithan return to the city. The zombies are all dead, having burned themselves out after several hours. Most of the city is destroyed, and the few survivors that remain are burning the corpses. Adam and Loaithan then return to the jungle to ensure that they are not infected. Once they can be certain they pose no threat to the others, the couple plan to return to Mortlay. The end. And now for my thoughts on this book. Again, as usual, we'll start out with the cover. The cover, the Adam's leaping into the horde of zombies, swinging a sword, while Loaithan, a topper frog, is also jumping the battle. For what it's worth, it's a good cover. I'll go into a bit more details here in a little bit on this once I get to the actual story. Another thought I got on this is the art isn't by Gil Kane. I'm not sure why they switched over to Pat Broderick. I'd be curious to find out, but I'm not going to complain. As I said earlier, Pat Broderick drew a ton of Firestorm comics. So, to me, if they're going to change, he's a welcome change to the book. Again, as I said previously, I did like what Gil Kane did with it. But if you are going to change, you can't do much worse than Pat Broderick. So, or much better. However that works out. Anyways, Pat Broderick's a good team for this book. I kind of wish they would have stayed with Gil Kane just, again, overall, just for the continuity of the story and for the story to flow, like the other specials and the miniseries. But what can I say? I love the way the Adam's just jumping into battle, his sword ready to swing into action against a bunch of zombies, which again we'll get into. So to start our story, again, overall, I will lay my cards on the table. Again, for what it is, and I keep saying that, it was a good story. I am just not sure about Ray going up against zombies. But again, it's an interesting concept. Again, the first page here is just kind of a splash page showing what's going to happen. We got the city burning in the background. We got Ray and Loaithan fighting off the zombies. My one complaint about this story, about the art in the book, is that throughout this book, Ray has a ponytail. And I don't know what it is, just something about the ponytail, or at least the way Pat Broderick draws it. I'm just not 100% happy with the way the ponytail looks in here. I know he doesn't get to a barber very often. He's supposed to be, a Conan type character at this point, a barbarian type, with the sword and sorcery and all that. But just the ponytail looks a little odd to me. Maybe it's just because I don't see it very often. I don't know. But that's neither here nor there. My other comments on the story itself in general. Again, the city, and they did mention during the miniseries, I believe it was, that there was, pink skins their size. I don't know where the pink skins came from. I still don't know. I've read through the 4-issue miniseries and the 3 specials. And again, we find out they are aliens. They came from a different world. They were using a white dwarf star or whatever to propel their ship, which leaked, caused them to shrink down. But I don't know if maybe there was both pink skins and the orange skins or whatever they are that were came down together. Maybe I don't know where the pink skins, as they call them, what we call Caucasian, came from. It's a little odd. I wish I would have got a little bit of an explanation for that somewhere in either the miniseries or one of these specials. I don't know, and maybe I missed it. If someone out there that read this knows where they came from, or why there's a 2 different type, let me know. The first couple pages of the story is Adam and Lewiathan and one of the AKA Pinkskins breaking into one of the labs. And again, so we did know that they did come from space. So them having scientific experiments and stuff. I mean, the whole city came across as very barbarian, so it's kind of odd a little bit. But then again, in the original story, the 4-issue miniseries, he did have all the computers and stuff. So, and he had chips, and they could implant chips in people's heads. So, I guess not that out of place for it. Again, Torvald being the kind of guy Torvald was, I'm not surprised he had his lab booby-trapped to explode if someone got into it. And again, I'm not surprised that this ruler Drogo blames Rey for what happened. And again, as I've talked about, I mean, again, there's a lot of pink skins making up the council. Drogo, I don't know about Drogo. He's a pink skin, but he's got like blue stripes on his head. I'm not sure if that's like makeup or if that's skin coloring. I'm not quite sure on that. Drogo throws Rey out of the palace. And he talks with Lewiathan. She's been talking to the people. And like this, she's telling them that, she's talked to a lot of people. And they all say the same thing. The ousting Torvald achieved nothing. They just substituted one tyrant for another. And again, that's just like any other story you see where there's like a bad guy that's in power, whether it's a gang leader or a dictator, whatever it is. Once you oust that bad guy, there's always another one waiting in the wings. Either that or there's a big big turf wars and things, people fighting for that right. So you've got a power vacuum going on, and well, it needs to be filled with somebody. And again, like this, so Rey's like, is there any chance for revolt? And she's like, they aren't ready. The oppression is here, but not the hope. They need a leader. And no, it isn't you. They're extremely distrustful of outsiders. Whatever rebel leader emerges, he or she needs to come from their own ranks. So I like, Lewiathan just puts it down the line right there. She's like, yeah, they need someone to rise up and lead them and fight against Drogo. But no, honey, it's not you. Just because your name's on the title and you're the main character of this book, you're not going to be the leader this time. Sorry about that, honey. And again, just like, and that's what it was in most play. I mean, in the miniseries, sort of that a miniseries, writer's convenience, if you will, but it was just lucky that they accepted Rey because, what was his name, Taron, was going to be the leader until he died. And I think that's kind of what helped Rey be able to do what he did and help the good guys, is that Taron gave him his blessing, basically. And then Lewiathan, the princess, fell for Rey, and together the two things made Rey possible to rise up and lead the Moradians against their leader, so, and make them, destroy everything. So, and also like how she points out here that, the leader, where's it at? Oh, here it is. They're surely distasteful outsiders. Whatever rebel leader emerges, he or she, because again, this was the mid-'80s, late 80s, feminism was at a rise, and Lewiathan, being a very strong and powerful woman herself, knows that it could be a woman that could be their leader. And it's kind of like Chekhov's gun right here. She's talking about a leader needs to rise from within, which makes you think that maybe a leader's going to rise up and rebel against Drogo. Spoilers, doesn't happen. So I don't know how I feel about that. And then here on page 7, I get my answer about Drogo's face. Was that makeup or his skin? Here we see he's just a regular Caucasian guy. He doesn't have the blue markings on him, so it must be just a paint job. And then we see Lewiathan tending for some young child outside of the village, and he's talking about how his eyes are on fire, and his mom will be back soon. She went to get some medicine, and the kid's dad comes home, and he's one of these guys that's, their faith is very strict. They don't allow any medicine, and we find people like that in the modern America. So being in the Brazilian forest and being, kind of a barbarian culture, it's not surprising to find people like that. And the boy's father, his name is Jarek, kicks Lewiathan out, says, well, tend to my wife can tend to my son, she knows what she's doing. And so Lewiathan waits for the wife, whose name is Mira, Meira, And since Shag's not here, I'll say it, Mira is kind of hot. But anyway, she comes back with the medicine, and she tells him basically that you've done what you can, thank you, off the way till basically I'm alone with me giving the medicine because my husband doesn't approve of medicine, as we talked about just a minute ago. Then on page 10, we get, I forget her name, the pink-skinned doctor that was with Ray and Loathan when they broke into the lab. Their name, Yan? Y-L-A-A-N? Yan? Yan's telling them how the hospital's filled, how people are going to die. Either their heart or lungs are going to give out, or they're going to burn their own from their try that again. They're going to burn themselves out from their own body heat. And again, Ray, he said, I am responsible. Maybe Drogo and the council were right. Some research isn't worth the risk. If I hadn't broken into Tobol's lab. And then Jan points out a very good fact that, even if he hadn't, sooner or later someone would have. So again, even though Ray wants to blame himself because that's what Ray does, as she said, it's basically Torbal's fault. Torbal's the one that booby-trapped the lab. And if Ray and Loathan hadn't busted in, eventually someone would have. So this would have happened at some point. And an interesting thing here that Jan Strand, the writer, she's saying that what's her name, Jan is saying that they need to find a cure, and Ray's like, you need a bacteriologist, not a physicist. And again, that's the reason I think that's interesting is that usually in most comic books, a scientist is a scientist. One scientist can do almost everything. So it's kind of funny seeing him say, well, you need a certain type of scientist. I'm a physicist. I don't understand this. But usually most of the time, if you have a scientist character, they know how to do everything, even though that's not how it really normally is. And then here on page 12, we get a little fight when the guards come to try to arrest, in quotes, trying to arrest the Adam and Loathan. And actually, I guess I can remove the quotes from the arrest. They're trying to arrest him for treason. Because again, as we just talked about, even though someone would eventually broke into the lab, Drogo has to have someone to blame this on. And who better than the outsiders? Eventually, Ray and Loathan is captured by some Skull Riders and put in prison. And as the guards are talking, Adam's like, so what if Drogo dies before passing sentence on us, or the council dissolves? The guard's like, hey, maybe he'll be released. On the other hand, you may be left here to starve, forgotten. It's happened before. And then we see Drogo just burning up with fever, and one of his personal servants, slave girls or whatever, again another hottie, is left to make him look nice because he's dying. And he's like, What are you doing? And she's like, just fixing your face, Lord Drogo. They say you're on your deathbed, you know. Yes, I heard. You will make me pretty for death? I command you. Of course, Lord Drogo. I'll make you look as you've never looked before. And there's, on page 16, she's got an evil, or page 15, I'm sorry. She's got like an evil, wicked smile on her face. Still hot, but she's got an evil smile on her face. So she's up to no good. And then we go back to Jarek and his wife and their kid that's dying. And she goes to give him the medicine. And when she checks her pouch, she finds that the medicine's gone. And so she's mad at her husband, thinking that he stole it and got rid of the medicine. Again, that's the only way, as far as she's concerned, to save their son. And he just tossed it out because he doesn't believe in their medicines. And she's sitting there crying. She looks down, she sees the pouch on the floor. And apparently he did. He swallowed his pride and his own will just to do something that he, again, this isn't just some political thing. This is very deep to his core. He doesn't believe his religion, doesn't believe in outside medicine. But, praying to his gods or whatever didn't work. So, again, this is his son. And again, having kids myself, again, I've got my 3 boys and my daughter. I understand where he's coming from. I mean, if your kids are that sick, they're dying, even if you don't believe in something, if there's a possibility this might work, you're going to grasp at it. So I can't blame the guy there. But unfortunately, it worked for him. And the young kid dies. unfortunately. And again, most people don't like when they kill off kids in stories and whatnot, but I think it's very well done here. And again, I like the fact that... Now, I'm sure I got the names confused. Jarek's the kid. The dad, his name is Ben. Looks like it's B-E. Kind of hard to read on the writing here. It's a little ran together a little bit. Looks like his name's Ben. That's what I call it. So the dad's name is Ben. The one that wrote down and gave the son Jarek the medicine. But as I said, Jarek died. That's what I was going to say. But I like the fact how Mira realizes what her husband's dead, and the just how much it took out of him to break down and give his son that medicine, hoping it would help him. And they're back at the Drogo's chambers, where he's dead. We find out that he died. And one of the guys that's looking over him was like, yeah, I can't imagine what become of the government. And one of the guys like, sir, shall I have the servant girl brought in to clean him up? What she's done to his face. And the other guy's like, man, leave it, no one will mind. And in the city, they're building a big fire pit to throw the bodies in to burn. While they're doing that, outside the city, Ben and Mira is having a little argument. Ben's digging a hole for his son to be buried. And Mira's like, what the city's ordered, Ben? Everyone has to die and go in the common grave. And he's all, throw in the pit, you mean? Like garbage. I won't do it. I loved him too, Ben. But Jarek's gone now, and it's up to us to protect the others. We can't do anything that might spread the sickness. We could be responsible for killing someone else's son. And so again, Mira wants to throw Jarek's body into the pit with the rest of the corpses. And Ben's like, no, I want to bury my son out here. He needs to have a proper grave. He doesn't need to be thrown in a mass grave with the rest of the bodies. And on here on page 20, my only complaint, I'm going to call it, is that Mira is running away. And maybe it's just these boots, but... maybe that's what it is. Just she looked kind of weird as she runs away. But I think it's just these big, kind of like, what are they called? Hugs or something like that? These big furry boots that the girls wear. They wear boots like this here. So it just makes her look odd as she's running away with these big old boots on her slender frame. But yeah, I think it's just those ugly boots. And then Mira picks up their son and says that she's going to take him and pair the rest of the bodies. And Ben's standing there, there's his pickaxe. And he's saying, put him down, you're not taking him anywhere. And she's like, you would strike me down, wouldn't you? You'd kill me for defying you. And tell me I'd let you. Let me pass, Ben. And he's like, dear God, what have I done? He realizes that, his son dying, he's just left him grief-stricken, not thinking properly. And he says, Mira, forgive me, I've been out of my mind. I killed him. I'm responsible. Everything I do is wrong. But please, please, let me bury our son. And again, having kids myself, and there was times my oldest son, Tim, when he was 5 or so, he had what's called an AVM. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but it's basically the blood vessels in his brain started leaking. And so he had a couple brain surgeries back then to basically stop the bleeding and stop from killing him. Usually it kills people. Luckily he was awake when it happened, so that we saw him pass out and we got him to the doctor in time. But I know how it is. Like I say, I almost lost my son then, so I understand what they're going through. I mean, I didn't lose him, as I've talked about in other episodes of my podcast. I have lost my brother at an early age, so I know where they're coming from, losing a loved one like that and wanting to do what's right by him. And again, just reading this, again, being a father, and that maybe, because when I first read this years ago, before I was a father, it didn't bother me. Now, reading this and seeing Ben taking responsibility for, maybe if they got the medicine sooner, it may have helped. But him being stubborn and stuck in his ways, he feels helped kill his son. And again, he's not... the medicine may have helped, it may have not helped. Because again, back in the city, they didn't find a cure for it. So, I don't know if the medicine would have helped. So I don't know how much blame Ben should take. And again, most of the blame is still on Torbil. If he hadn't booby-trapped his lab, this wouldn't have happened. But again, I can imagine Ben's pain, his son dying, him feeling responsible. And just the tears on us, it's just a very emotional. This here on page, top of page 22. Yeah, the top of page 22, just especially the second panel, it's a close-up of Ben and Mira, and Ben's got tears running down his eyes. He's sad and wants to bury his son. And the next couple panels here shows him and Mira burying their son quietly, no words or anything on it. I really love this top of this page here. And then the bottom part of the page, two-thirds of the page, is taking up the big funeral pyre for Drogo. There's people all around. Meanwhile, Adam's up in the cage. And so they're opening up the cell to move Ray and Lathan to another cell. And they're like, okay, you two, we're moving you to another cell. And Lathan's like, it's a shame. This one's such a clear view of the funeral. And the guard's like, I know, that's why we want it. Now move along, we don't want to miss the torching. And again, another little fight as Ray kicks her butt. Them not knowing who they're dealing with here. It makes me laugh every time I see Ray going to battle and fighting these guys. And then, again, the girl painting his face off like she's making him look odd. It doesn't really pay off too much. I mean, his arm drops down and there's like black lines on his, painted on his arms. Maybe his fingertips are painted black. And people kind of laugh at that, but we don't actually see his face here. And as Ray and Lathan tries to make their way through the crowd to get out of the city, another little fight between Ray and the crowd. And as they're fighting, all of a sudden they hear someone screaming, and Drogo sits up from the funeral pyre. And again, here, they think they're going to leave the makeup on his face, but you can't see anything here. It just looks like he doesn't have any makeup on his face at all at this point. As Drogo sits up, and he's burning alive, as it were. And his body says it reaches flashpoint, and it bursts into flames as his flaming corpse just comes to the ground. And in the ensuing chaos, Ray's able to make their getaway.
And then we go back out with Ben and I think it's Mira. As Mira wakes up and she sits up in bed and she says she hears something. And again, as I said earlier, to borrow a line from my buddy Shag's handbook, she is still hot while she's sitting there in her bed. But that's another story entirely. Let's move on with this. We go from her sitting in her bed looking all hot. I heard something outside. And Ben, like most men, it's probably nothing. Go back to sleep. I like the little... Again, these are people who are like, 6 inches high at the most, living out in the Amazon rainforest. Just like us in civilized society, the wife's like, honey, I hear something. You're hearing things. Go back to sleep. It's nothing. And again, being the woman, she doesn't listen. Mira sits up and... I like this. We hear from off panel, Mother, my eyes. And we see this look of horror on her face. And again, as I said previously, Mira is very attractive. She's drawn very beautiful in here. This top panel here on the top of page 25, this look of fear, this look of horror on her face, it's a fantastic image. Again, as I said, I just love the way this is drawn. While I did enjoy... And I do like what came previously. I do have to say that what Pat Broderick did here was fantastic. It was just... I love the look. You can tell that she's just horrified. And I guess not so much she's seeing. At this point, she just hears it just because she hears her son's voice. It's like, well, he was dead, but we buried him. It's just, again, being a parent myself, I know how that would feel. Again, I don't know how that feels because I haven't had that happen. Thank Joe Pesci, knock on wood. But I can imagine hearing your dead son calling to you outside. And then here in the middle of the thing, we see... I like it, but I don't, because I think this would have worked a little better maybe to be at the end of a page where she's open, because we see him standing in shadows. But right next to it, in a bigger image, we actually see his face. So the shock of seeing the boy standing there in shadows going, Mother, my eyes, they burn. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say ruined, because it's still a neat visual and it's great looking art. But the middle of the page, in case you haven't read this, I don't know why, you should, it's a great book. But the middle of the page, bigger than the other two little panels, then sit next to it, we see a picture of the boy sitting there, and he's got maggots. What's his name, Jarek? He's got dirt on in his hair and just eyes full of maggots. It's rather disgusting. But next to that, it's kind of like a surprise, we see him in shadows. I think if that shadow had been on the bottom of the page, and then seeing the close-up of his face and seeing the maggots crawling out of his eyes and the dirt falling off of him as he crawled out of the grave on the next page, I think it would have been more of a shock. Because before we get to that with your eyes, and I'm sure I could talk to my wife and she could give me some more information on this, as she's a graphic designer, but you follow along, and even as you're reading the top panels where you hear them off page saying my eyes, and she's running out, as you watch her run away, right below her, your eye automatically drifts down to that larger image of Jarek standing with the dirt on him, the maggots in his eyes. It's a great page, don't get me wrong. That's just a little nitpick I have. I think it would work better as far as a horror aspect or a gasp and shock aspect if that had been on the next page. But again, as usual, Ben, the man, comes up and says, "Stay away, that's not our boy." And she bends down to, she's like, "Of course it's our boy. It's Jarek. He's come back." And again, kind of, mother's blindness, doesn't see what's really in front of her. She just sees her son back to life. She doesn't see the maggots filling his eyes and crawling out. And Jarek takes his axe and kills his wife. I think. I'm misreading that. I misread that. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. Because one time we see him standing behind her with the axe saying, "Step away from him, Mary. Let me kill it. Our boy is dead. That thing is a monster, a demon." "It's our Jarek, Ben. Don't you even know your own son?" And for some reason I misread that. But actually it's Jarek biting into his mom's neck and killing her. And he's like, "Is that you, Father?" And that's when Ben takes the axe, "Forgive me," and just cleaves the son in half with it. And as a father myself, I know if I saw my dead son come back to life and kill my wife, that would leave me grief-stricken. Luckily, Ben had enough sense to kill his son again. Again, just an interesting little subplot within this. I mean, part of the main story about the dead coming back to life, but what's going on here, other than Lewiathan earlier visiting him, has no effect on our main story. It's just a little side story. And I'm sure this is going on in several other little outlying hamlets, or not hamlets even, little people who live away from town, maybe going through similar things. And then we get, like I say, Adam and Lewiathan trying to run to the city gates. It's being flooded by the dead coming back to life. So they make a run for the building. They run up the stairs. And again, usually that's what happens in horror movies. The people that's trying to survive run up the stairs. In this case, they had nowhere else to go. As they run up, they find some of the skull riders that died. Their friends were trying to do them a solid. Instead of throwing them in the pit with the rest of the dead bodies, they hid them in a closet or something to give them a proper burial later. It didn't work out because now we got zombies in the building too. Again, Adam, as I talked about in the synopsis, Adam and Lewiathan jump on a rock and fly away. And I talked about the rest of the fire burns down, the bodies burn themselves out. And we get Adam and Lewiathan waiting for the virus to make sure it's cleared itself out, make sure they're not infected before they go back home. We end with Adam writing his memoirs, which we're reading. And as he's writing, Lewiathan standing behind him watching, again, looking hot. Again, Pat Broderick, I don't think he can draw an ugly woman. And she comes up and kind of rubs her finger behind Adam's ear, and then we end with the pen laying on the ground. So I'm sure we know what happened there. But again, I'm kind of hemming and hawing here. I enjoyed this story. It's a great story. It doesn't, other than being Adam Lewiathan it doesn't really tie anything that can be for it. It's its own little horror story. And again, I'm not a big fan of horror stories in comics for the most part. But between Jan Strand and Pat Broderick on art, I think they did a great job on this. And again, I would recommend this series to anyone that's reading it. Because again, it's a great... I think, in my opinion, even though actually it is horror, I'm not really into horror comics so much. I like horror movies. I love, the Nightmare on Elm Street, the Halloween, the Friday the 13th, all of those. I love those movies. I just don't care for it as much translated into comics. When I read comics, I normally go for the superhero, as I've talked about elsewhere, 4-color adventures. But combining that with the horror, I think it did a pretty good job. So I definitely recommend this. Check out the Sword of the Atom special number 3. And seeing how I'm covering the Atom, you would think next month, his next appearance, if I'm not mistaken, was the Power of the Atom number 1, his new series. New for the time. We're going to hold off on that for a little while. Next month, in What's It Head's Longbox, we're going to start our multi-maxi series, the Armageddon 2001 crossover. Brief rundown on that. That was a 2-issue series that bookended all the annuals for that year. And we'll get into more detail about what it involved. But there was the Armageddon 2001. There was the annuals from that year, which was like 16 books or so. And then there was the book ended by the Armageddon 2001 issue number 2. I'm going to cover all those books over the next couple months, maybe the next year. I'm still breaking down whether I want to do 1 book a month, 2 books a month. And then there's a couple of mini-series that followed it. I'm still debating how in-depth I want to get on those. Overall, I guess I'll lay my cards on the table now. They were okay. They weren't great, but they were okay. Most people will think they were horrible, so we'll see. I'm going to cover those later on. But for now, that's going to do it for What's in Head's Longbox. We'll pick up in the Atom after I get done with Armageddon 2001. I'm guessing probably about a year and a half, maybe at the latest. But I'm going to go and play a couple more promos, and we'll be right back. Head Speaks will be back after these important messages. You know the story of Kal-El. Heck, you know Superman's origins. Rocket to Earth from a dying planet, grew up in Smallville, and so on. But you don't know the full story. Come, join your hosts, Pat Sampson, Matt Moore, and Aaron Moss, as they and you witness the history of a historic character. And there may be a surprise or two along the way. The Krypton Podcast, part of the DC TV Podcast Network, available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you download podcasts. Also at KryptonPodcast.com. Come, listen, enjoy.
It started as an idea, a flicker. Now with a simple voice email to the Superman in the Bronze Age podcast, that flicker has become a flame.
Now, Russell, you're ready to start a podcast.
Yep, you're ready to go.
Yes, start it, and then we can email you.
Whoa. And Russell has been, the most consistent emailer. I think it's time that he does start a show.
DC Comics Presents. After Dave's done, and you're not covering every issue. So he could do all of them.
I would highly recommend that, actually.
That would be awesome. So there you go, Russell. Go for it. I can't wait to hear his reaction to this.
Well, boys, here's your response. The DC Comics Presents show, hosted by me, Russell Bragg. On each episode, I will cover 1 issue of DC Comics Presents, in publishing order, until I reach the end of the series. I will also be covering all 4 annuals. Plus, I will be doing a character spotlight on each of Superman's guest stars, and I'll be going to the spinner rack to see what other comic books were available. Join me each episode of the DC Comics Presents show, please go to the show's website at www.dccpshow.com for more information. That's DCCPSHOW.
And now back to Head Speaks. Welcome back to Head Speaks. Now, I'm going to play a little segment called...
On your mark, get set. We're riding on the internet.
The internet is really, really great.
For porn.
I got a fast connection so I don't have to wait.
For porn.
What? There's always some new site.
For porn.
I browse all day and night.
For porn.
It's like I'm surfing at the speed of light.
For porn.
Internet porn, Roman orgy scenes. Internet porn, dominatrix queens. Internet porn, girl on girl on girl on girl on girl on guy on sheep.
Bet you're going surfing on the internet.
Where is Head going?
This month on Where's Head Going? Again, I'm going to talk about another podcast. I haven't ran any websites recently that worth me talking about for the most part, so I'm sticking to my podcast talkabouts, if you will. This month, we're going to talk about a podcast called Now Playing, the movie review podcast. I found this one, I don't even know how I found it accidentally. I ran into it. I started checking out. The first couple I listened to, I wasn't too impressed with. They were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, which I talked about a little bit earlier. I love the horror movies, that genre, those movies. A couple of the hosts kind of ragged on it, and I don't know, they came across to me as know-it-all fanboys that wants to hate things just to hate things. But that's been quite a while back. I'm still listening to it. I'm talking about it on here. So apparently I found something I enjoy. Overall, I enjoy their podcast. I may disagree with some of the things they think, some of the things they say. Sometimes I think they're full of hot air. Maybe they just too full of themselves sometimes. Again, not to diss the guys, but I enjoy the podcast overall. And again, they look at different movies, either movies that are coming out in theaters. They look at series. They've got retrospectives where they've been looking recently. Been doing a Stephen King retrospectives where they look at all Stephen King's work, and that gets interrupted. They have the Avengers or the Marvel Cinematic Franchise retrospective, the DC retrospective. We look at all those different movies, and when they do a certain retrospective, for instance, they did the Marvel. They did all the Marvel movies from point A up to where they were at, and then when a new movie comes out, like recently the Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they will release a podcast as part of the retrospective on that movie. So I definitely, right now they're doing the Death Wish retrospective. They've had a pause on the Stephen King to do some of these other shows. But I'm definitely really enjoying what they're laying down for the most part. So I definitely recommend, if you like movies, if you like hearing people talk about them, check out Now Playing, the movie review podcast. And I'll have a link in the show notes for it. And this month, we're not going to really do anything with Head's Mailbag because I haven't really got very many likes on my Facebook. I haven't been checking Twitter like I should. There's been no iTunes reviews and no emails. So at this point, we're going to go skip that. And we're going to go and move on to our coming next month. Next month on Head Speaks. Next month, we're going to start, as I talked about just a few moments ago, my Armageddon 2001 coverage. I'm still working out some of the details. That's the way I work. I run things behind. I know I'm going to look at the Armageddon 2001, every single annual that ties into it, and then the final book, Armageddon 2001, second issue. I'm still debating whether I'm going to look at the miniseries that came after it, Armageddon 2001, Alien Invasion, and then Inferno or something like that. I forget now. There's a couple of miniseries. And we'll get more in depth about that next month. Also, I'm still debating whether I'm going to have some of my other segments in there. I've got a few things I want to talk about, but I'm not quite sure. I'm still working out the details. But I do know next month we'll have Armageddon 2001,
And I should have a couple of guest hosts with me next month. But that's going to do it for this time. It's time for me to turn in. It's time for me to get this thing wrapped up so I can get it out. Until next time, remember, Head has spoken. Thank you for listening to another fantastic episode of Head Speaks. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know. Drop me an email to head@headspeaks.com or visit our home at head.headspeaks.com. You can also visit and talk with me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. You can also send an MP3 file with your thoughts and I can play that on the air. And you can also get more of me on my other podcasts. Be sure to listen to Task Force X, where monthly I look at John Ossinger's Suicide Squad and Paul Kuppenberg's Checkmate comics from the 80s and early 90s. Also, over on G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, my podcasting friends Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, along with myself, are looking at all of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero comics, and related titles from Marvel and IDW. All of my headcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher, along with the respective blogs and my main page at headspeaks.com. All comments, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Head Speaks are owned wholly by the speaker of said comments and do not express the opinions of Head Speaks, unless, of course, I'm the one making the comments. Head Speaks, Task Force X, and G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, are all part of the Headcast family. So join us next month for another wonderful episode of Head Speaks. Until then, I'll see you in the funny pages. Good night. Hey there, everyone. This is your old buddy Head. You know, Aaron Moss, over at the Head Speaks podcast. I'm still here, and so is my podcast. Starting in November, and for however many months it takes, we're going to put the Atom aside for a little while, and we're going to look at DC Comics Armageddon 2001 crossover. Join me and some of my other podcasting and internet friends as we take a look at, well, Armageddon 2001. A hero today becomes a villain tomorrow. Join us and find out who. On the Headcast Network, Armageddon 2001, along with a lot of my usual segments. Come, check us out. Available at head.headspeaks.com, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and wherever else you find your podcasts at. Come, check us out.